All righty, let's go ahead and say the Pledge of Allegiance. All righty, we're going to call this meeting to order. We'll start with roll call.
Mayor Coleman.
Present.
Thank you. All counselors present and Counselor Krebs previously requesting to be excused, and her absence is unexcused.
Is unexcused, right? Okay.
Unexcused.
All righty, thank you very much. The agenda,
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as presented, not excusing Ms. Krebs from the meeting.
I'll second that.
awesome. Go ahead and do a vote. There you go.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
the motion carried unanimously.
All righty. So at this time, we go on to citizen comment. And I do have a few in front of me. So we'll start off with Judy McNeil Smith. And as you come up to the podium here, we will be keeping track of time. So it's a 3-minute limit. And we look forward to hearing what you have to say. Sorry, could you turn your microphone on? I apologize. Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it. Perfect.
Okay. Tonight I'm here as a representative for the La Puente Board. They could not be here and our executive director is out sick, so I am speaking on their behalf. We urge you to support moving forward with the proposed facility and joint venture with La Puente. Together and alongside other community partners, we will work to strengthen our community's safety net by providing services where individuals can get what they need to stabilize, heal, strengthen, and ultimately thrive. Respectfully, Nancy Starling Ross, Board Chair, Elise Rudolph, Vice Chair, Elisa Kanugi, Secretary, Janet Camp, Treasurer, Helen Lester, Rhonda Salazar, Alamosa Department of Social Services, Michael Stewart, Associate Professor of Sociology, ASU, Kylie Romero, Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, Amy Blakely, SLV Health, and Amy Kanugi, Southern Colorado Farms. In addition, I would like to, this is for the supporting the soup kitchen and low barrier shelter. I would also like to present to council, and I have a copy for everyone, a letter from San Luis Valley Behavioral Health Group, who supports the proposed project to relocate the soup kitchen and establish a low barrier shelter as both an offer of essential service to our most vulnerable community members. These efforts will provide a safer, more accessible environment while addressing hunger and homelessness in meaningful ways. We believe this initiative has the potential to significantly improve the well-being for our region. Sincerely, Victoria Romero, CEO and President, SLV Behavioral Health Group. And just on behalf of myself, I just want to say I've been working in the field of homeless services and behavioral health for over 40 years now, both in Seattle and here. I don't want us to forget our most vulnerable population and hope that we can come together in terms of crafting a community effort to really support those that need us the most within our community. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Christina Bolt.
Some folks from the encampment is running behind you. Put her.
I have one.
Yeah, if we can put her later.
We'll push her to the end, and if she comes before we finish, that'd be great. No worries. Paloma Mestis.
Hello. I'm Paloma Mestis. I'm owner and operator of Frosty Acres Rolled Ice Cream. So I just wanted to come tonight on behalf of the vendor ordinance that you guys are discussing tonight. I wanted to come just on behalf of not only our business, but anybody else who's kind of venturing this new vendor entrepreneurship that's been showing that it's going to be a good thing for our community. And so I just hope that we can come to terms in something that allows it here in Alamosa to be in events, to not have one or two brick and mortar restaurants to be in control of that. I wanted to also put out there that I've worked with great organizations here, from Young Professionals of Alamosa to Visit Alamosa, the visitor center, which they want to start including things here in the valley to bring a community sense. And I think food trucks allow that and to bring community. So I hope that you guys can see the benefits of that, and to allow for things to be in our community where we all can get a little bit of something, because being denied because of personal reasons, which I feel like has happened in the past specifically to us, is not quite fair. So I'm hoping that you guys come to a resolution tonight on that. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Manny Filio. I probably didn't get your last name right, and I apologize. Oh, good. Phew.
And I just want to jump in. If you are speaking on the ordinance that relates to the sit and lie, there's actually a public hearing, which would be the more appropriate time. If you're here to speak on something else, then this is the appropriate time.
Okay,
So, but if this is on ordinance number 19 on the agenda, there is a public hearing specific for that.
okay, I would like to know when that is, and I will speak on that then. I will refrain from speaking on that now and then just speak on the other.
Perfect. Okay.
Great. My name is Manny Feliu. I'm a local resident here in the city of Alamosa. I'm the executive director of a new community center here, and I serve on the board of another local nonprofit. I'd like to focus today my comments on a proposed amendment to ordinance 11-53. There's a proposal to remove subsection B1 in recognition of the impracticality of our current ordinance requirements to find a suitable place to camp or shelter before removal and citation. I'm proposing a revision to the proposed amendment first read at the City Council meeting on August 21st, 2024. I do believe that clause was originally adopted in good moral spirit. In that same spirit, instead of removing it, I urge the council to consider an alternate revision. I propose that subsection B1 should be amended to read: the officer has first offered a resource guide, including but not limited to contact information for any shelters in the city, contact information for recovering services in the city, a map denoting public camping areas in the city, and a map denoting public camping areas around the city, such as BLM land. I believe that this language ensures that before any enforcement action is taken, individuals are fully informed of the resources available to them. It promotes public safety while demonstrating compassion for the vulnerable members of our community. And I will refrain from my other comments, but you have them in front of you there on a proposal for both amended proposals 1153 and 1149. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All righty, Una King.
She's on the sit lie, so she's going to wait for the public hearing.
Got it. Sorry about that. Amanda Pearson.
So after Amanda Pearson, live in the city of Alamosa, I'm here, I work for La Puente. I was the city judge for 18 years, county judge for 18 years, child protection attorney for 20 years. I wore a lot of hats. And I left those jobs with the question, how do we get good people with good ideas to get stuff done? So all of you wonder how I ended up here. It was that question. And I've been spending the last 8 years of my retirement trying to figure out how to answer that question. La Puente, I asked them, like it came up in this conversation about should we be supporting this soup kitchen, low barrier shelter? We don't really need to move the soup kitchen. It's a hassle for us to move the soup kitchen. It's something the city is interested in because it helps remove foot traffic from a neighborhood, and we honor that, but it doesn't help our work. And our work is we share compassion. We have compassion for the people who are on the fringes. That's La Puente's job. When people complain about La Puente, our mission is to have compassion. Everybody is of value, everybody has dignity, and thank God we're not supposed to judge people about who gets compassion, we just give it. You need food, we're gonna try. You need shelter, we're gonna try. You need help, we're gonna try. And hopefully people will have somebody who has shown them compassion and then step through the right door into being a part of the community. So the opportunity here is for all of us to look to the future. The opportunity for La Puente is to give compassion to a group of folks that we are having trouble meeting their needs because they are homeless. They don't want to come into the shelter. There's rules at the shelter. The opioid epidemic, drug epidemic, the fracture of society has caused us to be in this place, and ignoring it won't help us to solve it. So I'm going to leave you with a quote of Hubert Humphrey. Our La Puente is compassion. We are willing to do this for compassion's sake, to really help people. For you all, you have to figure out your why. You have it on your agenda I saw of having a community people can live in. The ultimate moral test of any government is the way it treats three groups of its citizens. First, those in the dawn of life, our children. Second, those in the shadows of life, our needy, our sick, our handicapped. And third, those are in the twilight of life, our elderly. Please, let's talk about the people who are in the shadow of life, the needy. They don't go away. They have needs. They deserve to be treated as valued and in dignity. And that will identify what kind of community we are if we do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Christina Bolt.
Hello, thanks for letting me speak today. I'm here just to talk about the two issues that you all will be discussing later that have to do with our folks out at St. Benedict's. First, I'd like to talk about the electricity issue. We were trying to get some folks from St. Benedict's here to chat about that, but didn't really work out, so I apologize. I just wanted to share one story. I am for electricity being restored to St. Benedict's. And one story I just wanted to share from somebody who's living out there was that there's a gentleman living out there and he had a seizure recently. And it was just a medical condition that he had and wasn't able to keep up on the meds for it. And it took the other community members out there 10 minutes, I guess, to find a charged phone to then call the ambulance to get there to help address this person's seizure. So I thought that was like kind of a powerful story to share of some of the impacts that the lack of electricity has had out there. I'm sure there's plenty of other impacts as well with especially the security cameras and stuff not being up. But I thought that was a very interesting story. And then I did want to talk a little bit about the soup kitchen and low barrier shelter. One thing that in our discussions about the need for that really stood out to me was the fact that a low barrier shelter that is only open during the cold weather months addresses this one safety concern, but it's not the only safety concern that we're concerned about out there. And those, a lot of the safety things that we're trying to address out there do happen 365 days a year. And I think that a year-round low barrier shelter would help address some of those safety concerns that aren't just weather related. And that's all I would like to share. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That's all the cards I have. So Ms. Martinez, if you're okay to do your little spiel that you do for those that are online and see if anybody would like to add to the comments.
Yes, ma'am. If you're on the Zoom app and you want to speak for a citizen comment, you'll use the raise hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're on a telephone, you'll dial *9. It looks like we have one hand raised. It just says La Puente Home.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Lance, and yeah, I've got COVID. I'm at home. I'm going to sit in on this meeting. I was looking back, La Puente back in 1982 received between 1,100 and 1,200 new intakes a year. And in the 90s, then we did prevention work where we learned from the residents what they needed to have prevented that. And over the years that our numbers went down, just starting that, our numbers went down to 700, 600. And also back in those 90s, the unemployment was up at 14% or so. And then when unemployment dropped to 5%, it became easier to get folks a job. And so we've just seen the dynamic of homelessness change so much over the years. And the folks, the families and of folks that are outside of addiction, those that are workforce ready, and others, those are really fit and can move into our program. Those that have addiction, those that have mistrust for institutional support, those that have untreated mental illness, those that just want to be with their partner because their partner might not be allowed there, and those that are not emotionally or physically ready to address addiction, they're a separate population. And that's what has grown in terms of the dynamic of those that we have. And for the last 4 years, where we began our street outreach, we really learned that like two of the most important ingredients to move someone forward are they're feeling safe and that they're not just scrambling for their own survival and their safety. And the second one is building connections. And street outreach has shown their success with that, but it means so much to be able to reach people more conveniently and in one place. So the proposed new facility would really provide more than food. It would provide an opportunity to build connections for those who are working to stable their lives and help us navigate them into services. So this opportunity really aligns with La Puente's mission, even though the dynamic of those who are experiencing homelessness has changed quite a bit over the years. So I would be really excited to roll up my sleeves and kind of enter this new chapter of creating a partnerships and a new safety net for those who are hardest to serve.
Alrighty, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak from online?
I don't see any other hands raised.
All right, with that, Ms. Sanchez, do you have any responses to any of the comments?
No, I believe all of the items addressed tonight will be discussed later on the agenda, and council will probably have a full discussion as well as staff presentation.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, we'll move on to consent calendar A. I apologize. I have an old agenda. So we will move on to the ceremonial items. And so what I'm going to do is we have one here for a proclamation for POW MIA Recognition Day. And I am going to have Jamie Dominguez go ahead and read that for us.
The City of Alamosa Proclamation POA MIA Recognition Day. Whereas the United States National POW MIA Recognition Day is observed across the nation on the third Friday of September each year. And whereas it shall be recognized that the third day and date for this year is September 20th, 2024, a day for Americans to honor the admirable bravery and immeasurable sacrifices of prisoners of war, POW, and those who are missing in action, MIA, as well as to honor the loved ones and families waiting for those unaccounted for to come home. And whereas Mount Blanca Post 899 and auxiliary of the Veterans of Foreign Wars recognizes that more than 81,000 American service personnel are still missing in action. And whereas the missing from each conflict as of 1973 are as follows: World War II missing 73,678, accounted for 1,648, unaccounted for 72,030. Korean War missing 8,157, accounted for 699, unaccounted for 1,574. Cold War missing 128, accounted for 12, unaccounted for 126. Gulf War and Libya operations missing 6, accounted for 0, unaccounted for 6. And whereas these servicemen and women are assumed did but are still accounted for, with one service member being unaccounted for from Alamosa. And whereas Mount Blanca Post 899, an auxiliary of the Veterans of Foreign War, shall observe the 20th of September 2024 to pause to remember, reflect on, and honor the sacrifices and services of those who were prisoners of war, POWs, as well as those still missing in action, MIAs. Now therefore, Mayor Pro Tem Liz Hensley and the City of Alamosa, and on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim September 20th, 2024 as POW MIA Recognition Day in Alamosa, and encourage all citizens to join me in pausing to reflect on the sacrifices made by these service members and pay tribute to all American POWs and those missing in action who served our country with great honor and courage, given under my hand and the seal of the City of Alamosa, Colorado, on this 18th day of September 2024.
Thank you very much. I would like to have you come up, you and your group, and anything you would like to say to this.
So I would first like to introduce ourselves. My name is Nadia Flores. I am the auxiliary historian for Auxiliary 899. I am also the department president for the Department of Colorado for the VFW Auxiliary this year. This is our commander and district commander, William Flores. Our auxiliary president, Rowena Martinez, for 899 as well. And we would like to express our deep gratitude in taking the time to read this proclamation and to take that into consideration, as we do still have one missing from our own valley.
Thank you very much. Any comments? I will say, it reminded me, and this is going to show my age, I was really young at the time, but I remember having a bracelet, a POW bracelet. I think it was from the Vietnam War. And I probably didn't quite understand it at the time, but at the same time knew somebody was missing and there was a name on it. But to this day, I still remember that. And as I grew older, realized that importance. But it's something that always still sticks with me and that we can't forget, you know, even though it's been some time and stuff, but all those people that have given their lives. And so anyway, thank you very much for what you're doing. We'll come down there and we'll present this to you. Mayor Coleman, I do have a pin for you that was given. So I have this, I'm holding it for you for when you get back.
Thank you, and thank you for the pin.
All righty. Well, now moving forward to consent calendar A.
Mayor, I move that we approve consent calendar A.
Second. Awesome. Okay, everybody can start voting.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
the motion carried unanimously.
Great. All righty, so now we're gonna go ahead and go to regular business. And we have a presentation from outside agency, and so this will be the lead and co-responder update.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And so if we have our group who's here for the lead and co-responder, come on up to the podium. This includes you too, Stephanie. And Chief Dean Felder, Clarissa, CRP team. So I do have a few different updates and some that Clarissa sent us, and she may add to it as well as some introductions, some information on co-responders, and then introductions on our part as well. So from a lead update perspective for the last quarter, the team has been really busy with increased referrals. For the last 3 months, they've received 56 referrals. 9 of those were social referrals from the DA, co-responders, and law enforcement. They do have a new case manager, which is our old program manager, April Dominguez. We also have a volunteer, which I'm sure we'll get to introductions with that here in a minute. There's also staff training related to regional lead meetings and training and evaluation training, and then a lot of outreach activities. So National Night Out, Overdose, Lunch and Learn, Summer on the Rio, and Hope and Recovery. On the co-responder side for the last quarter, we had 28 assessments and then 673 follow-ups between the 2 co-responders and the program manager. The co-responder and program manager are also attending a weekly street outreach meeting from a homeless perspective. The program manager is also attending St. Benedict outreach with CRP every Monday. And then they are also looking forward to maybe doing some shadowing ride-alongs, the co-responders and leads, to better integrate those 2 programs. From an introduction side for the city, as council might remember, Connie and April went on to other jobs here in the community. And we did do a process to interview for the co-responder program manager. And so we have made an offer for the co-responder. They've accepted and they start next week, May does. So we'll do introductions once she starts. But Stephanie, who we made an offer to and she accepted, started on Monday. And so we've thrown her into a lot. Stephanie Johnson comes to us with a lot of great experience. She was a behavioral health technician for a few different agencies, a recovery coach, collaborating with multidisciplinary teams for treatment plans for patients, crisis intervention services for patients in need. Also, a detox technician, and working with clients, trying to just coordinate that they have the resources that they need. So we're really excited to have Stephanie. And then we'll jump around a little, I guess. So if we want Stephanie, if you want to say anything and council can ask questions, and then we'll circle back to CRP because I know there's some introductions there as well. So Stephanie.
So I'm Stephanie Johnson, born and raised here, moved to Denver, did emergency psych, detox, recovery coach, a lot of co-agency efforts for different things. Pretty much it. Back here in the valley. Third day. Yeah.
All righty, thank you, Stephanie. We're looking forward to having you on our team.
And then Clarissa, I didn't know if you had some updates for CRP and introductions.
Yeah, why don't I let people come up and introduce you? Why don't you guys come up and just say your name and what your position is? And you know some of these. And so let's do the new ones last. How's that? Gail, do you want to go? And then
So you guys all know me, Dale Garcia Coons, and I am the supervisor ICM case manager. So glad to be here.
Trent, come say hi. They're like, if you stand
Hello.
back.
Trent Mills, also supervisor, ICM, Centers for Programs.
I don't think you've met Rita Wilcox before. She's been here a little bit longer.
Rita Wilcox, and I'm an intensive case manager, level 3.
Okay, Josh, you want?
Hi, my name is Josh Cannell. I'm a full-time volunteer just for this year with Mennonite Voluntary Service, and I am placed with the ICM team at CRP.
And I want you to know Luke came to us through that same program, and Alice Price has brought us, we've got quite a few employees. It's just amazing. And then April, who you've met. So if anyone wants to come shadow, we may hire you afterward.
April Dominguez, the new ICM case manager for CRP.
So I don't know if I have any other updates. I kind of sent most of it. We're fully staffed for the first time in a while. And we also have Josh here to help us. So I'm kind of excited to see how it will feel when we're not rushing around quite as much.
You know, and then I want to make sure, see if Chief has any updates for either lead or co-responder. But I almost forgot to mention that we have been selected to be a group of 16 communities across the nation to maybe participate in a 5-year study of diversion and what that looks like, what can make it successful, building engagement in the public, sustainability, those types of things. They're applying for a grant. So it's not a done deal yet, but we are one of the 16 communities that the university wants to include in the study for that. So I think it says a lot for the program we have and everything that we've accomplished. Chief, did you have anything you wanted to update on for either of the two programs?
Good evening, Council, Mayor. So we did get Sergeant Squires, we moved him to that new position, and he's going to oversee our lead and co-responder. And I'll tell you, just even this first week with Stephanie coming on board, and then when our new one comes on next week, he's already got a training program for them to really integrate them into the police department. And I have made it very clear to him that that we will make this program very successful. And he's already taken the bull by the horn. So I think we're going to have a lot of success with this going forward because first off, we have a lot better structure. So I think this is going to work out a lot better. But other than that, that's all I got. Thank you.
That's it from an update perspective, right, Clarissa?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. I was gonna say, we did have our operational work group today and we had 32 people attend just to talk about resources and participants, and it was nice.
And again, I'll just make the offer to council. I know for some of you from a work schedule perspective, but if you ever have an opportunity to attend one, it visually provides the reason of why lead is important, because getting boots on the ground representatives from SLV Health, Behavioral Health, Crossroads, Valleywide, housing organizations, and talking about, okay, what is going on with Bill? We haven't seen him in a while. Oh, Bill got a new phone. Here's his new phone number. Now we can better, kind of working the individuals that way and making sure they're not falling through these cracks. These cracks wouldn't be even tempted to be filled if it wasn't for this program. So it's an amazing way to see how this is working.
Yeah, and it's our chance to get to know what's changed in every organization, who's new, who's left, what new resources out there. It's really nice. Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Any questions, comments? So I would just like to thank you. I think one of the things, first of all, you've got a great group, and obviously all of you have experience from all different areas. So I think it's great to bring that all together, that collaborative effort. I also really like the fact that the team effort. I know that when this started and where we're at now has definitely morphed. And what I really appreciate is as a team and as a group, we continue to bounce things off of each other, what's going well, what's not going as well, and all of us making those adjustments. So I just want to really thank you. And I'm excited for what's going to come going forward, especially having a full team.
And Counselor Hensley, it does look like the mayor has his hand up.
Thank you for watching for that. Go ahead, Mayor Coleman.
Sure, I'd just like to add, I'm really excited about the new addition to the team, the new employees. Thank you so very much for the efforts that our current staff and also the team with CRP that are doing what you're doing. And Chief, thank you for the comment you just made about making sure that you're going to do everything that you can to make sure that the program is successful. That means a lot. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Oh, we have one more comment now. Go ahead, Counselor Vigil.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I'm really enjoying being on the
the council representative for LEAD. It's very informative for me and I believe in the program. And so thank you all for all your hard work.
Thank you for being a rep. Yeah.
Great job. Thank you. All right, so moving on, staying with regular business, we have an annual update from the Main Street Advisory Committee, and I think Matt Abbey is going to do that for us.
Thank you, Councilor Hensley and Mayor and Council. Appreciate you giving me an opportunity and making the invitation. I've been sketching out my comments in my head for the last couple of days to try and organize them a little better than I normally do with respect to what the community's been working on. And like others in the room, I wear a lot of hats. And so I have to compartmentalize a little bit and make sure I have the correct hat on. I'm wearing two hats tonight. I have two members of our scout troop in the audience working on their citizenship in the community merit badges. But I'm really mostly just wearing my Main Street Advisory Committee hat. That's what I'm here for. First, I want to apologize for the length of your agenda. Our committee's been working on a lot of stuff over the last year, and it seems like it all has sort of filtered down to tonight. I want to go over a couple of these things because a lot of them summarize or are summarized by this update. Every 3 to 6 months or so, I am prompted to whip out the downtown redevelopment plan. It's worth pulling out a couple of times a year and just kind of thumbing through. It's not the most exciting read after you've been through it a couple of times, but it is an instructive reminder of the progress we're making. Page 11 is my favorite. I like page 11 because it aggregates, it consolidates and summarizes all of the public input that came from the citizens during the extensive outreach that was done in the development of the plan. And it's kind of fun to grab a red pen and start ticking off the things that we have accomplished in a pretty short amount of time with COVID in the middle of it. In the past year, the committee has started focusing on some thornier things. Chronically vacant buildings. I've riffed on those before. They're a problem. They're a problem on several levels. They drag down the blocks. They're a problem because they don't generate sales tax revenue. But the flip side of that is it's private property and those rights are paramount. So striking a balance there where a lethargic owner, which is different than maybe an incapable owner, could be spurred to do something, is part of the puzzle. Since I moved here 15 years ago, the battle cry has sort of been do something, anything, get something in a building on Main Street and fill the storefront. And because of the work, you and staff and the chamber and the events group and the advisory committee, we've all been doing, that pressure is starting to shift a little bit. There is, for the first time, not a lot of space left to rent or lease or buy. And that's a new thing in the last couple of decades. So figuring out how to motivate members of our community to free up space is an important step. There are some code changes that we have proposed with respect to building use for businesses fronting Main Street. There are things we have proposed with respect to food truck regulations. We spent a lot of time working on downtown development areas versus business improvement districts. And that's kind of a roundabout path to that. The first idea was, gosh, wouldn't it be great during a festival day if we could walk around with a beer? That seemed kind of like a fun idea. I'd like to be able to get a beer and go to the festival and walk around on Main Street and be able to do that. So that started us down the path of common consumption area. Then that led to the question of how do we handle safety and security, because it is a public space. And that led to how do we fund that? And I learned more about BIDs and DDAs and tax increment funding. I never want to learn any more about tax increment funding. That's not my jam. And in the end, this is one of those items that the committee sort of backed away from, because in addition to the complexity of it and the liability questions, the folks that actually sell the beer in Alamosa weren't real excited about their exposure. And so it's an example of a thing where the committee said, wow, that would be fun, but maybe it's not the best thing. Add on to that, the fact that, liability security, easier access to alcohol ultimately leads to greater opportunities for mischief and issues, just like drugs. Notable improvements have been flashing beacons. Staff carried a lot of water on that. Pedestrian and safety improvements, crosswalk improvements. The traffic calming is working. The new chief and his team have been fantastic on enforcement and slowing things down, not to impede, but make it so that it's not Frogger trying to get across Main Street. I mean, 7 years ago, I sat here and said, I'm trying to get across Main Street, and the last car that brushed me back was a police car. Now, when I walk up to a street corner, at least some of the time, the traffic stops like it should. So there's a big cultural shift that's occurring. It's going to take some time, but it's the work of the staff and you guys and the committee that's making this possible. So for all of the brain damage we get day to day, there are quite a few wins. But we also have some headwinds and some challenges ahead of us still at both in terms of, regulations intended to steer, well-intentioned regulations intended to steer the community a certain direction, and, the routine day-to-day mischief in downtown. Today, I started typing up my notes, which is unusual, about 2 o'clock, and was summoned by my staff to the alleyway to clean up used hypodermic needles that were left on our dumpster in the middle of the afternoon, right? So I washed my hands before I came in. And then after that was paged by my wife, Tammy, to go down to Hobbytown and review video of a guy teaching his kids how to steal from my store. So we haven't won all the battles yet, but we're going the right direction. These kinds of everyday headwinds, which we're all accustomed to, it's in this scenario, it's more critical than ever that we follow the plan and that we maintain our course. The good news is that the work done by our city executing to the plan is paying dividends. Last First Fridays is a pretty good example of having a space and having energy and having people to drive those things forward. Main Street Advisory Committee feels like it's helping and contributing. I would encourage the council to continue on this path in support of the plan. There are few things as destabilizing to a business community than inconsistent or reactionary government and regulatory environments. Questions?
No questions, comments? Counselor Vigil?
Since you left it out there dangling for me a little bit, what does the committee think could be coming up that we might be steering off from the plan? Hate to put you on the spot.
You're fine. I'm comfortable on the spot. Right now, it's really about making sure that the stuff that we have on the books is adhered to, is respected, is obeyed equally. That if a business organization, for example, none in particular, moves into a building and is going to use it well outside of the code, that certainly we have a thoughtful conversation about it, that we remember that what the council decides ultimately is the law. But a lot of those regulations were promulgated by people that came before us for very specific reasons. I like to sometimes say to my staff, how do kids learn not to touch the stove? And mom or dad tells them, don't touch the stove, don't touch the stove, don't touch the stove. And then eventually what do? Well, they touch the stove and then they get burned, and that's how they learn not to. The nice thing about living in a civil society is that we have rules and regulations that are there to help keep us from touching the stove. Wouldn't it be terrible if we all learned not to speed by crashing our car instead of getting a ticket?
All righty. Thank you very much. I will tell you, I'm obviously on that board. I really enjoy coming to that meeting every Tuesday morning, once a month, every Tuesday morning. I think the group there has passion, has heart, and obviously in the last year or so really does roll up their sleeves and get to work. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Beth.
All righty, so we're gonna move forward now to business brought forward by city staff. So we're looking at development services, and I think you have quite a bit coming on here. So we'll start off with the first reading and introduction of ordinance number 21-2024, and an ordinance amending the Unified Development Code to change the definitions of temporary signs, to modify the classification of real estate offices, and to add a table note requiring first floor businesses facing Main Street in the central business district to be open a minimum number of hours per month.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We do try to write the longest ordinance numbers and names possible. That one is not a record yet, but we're still striving. Thank you to Mr. Abbey for a really solid introduction. So 2 of the 3 ordinances that we're bringing forward to you tonight are the direct result of those conversations with the Main Street Advisory Committee, and we brought those to you at a work session on July 31st. And I also can't pass this opportunity up to give a big shout out of gratitude to Beata Ramza for really shepherding this process while Rachel was on maternity leave. So the first one I think is probably the most straightforward. It's, it's very consistent with, I think, what the intent has been with the development code. And it's really just kind of buttoning up some loopholes, frankly. So as Main Street Advisory Committee has discussed, there are certain things that just, come about and need some little housekeeping. So one of those, for example, is temporary signs. The definition of a temporary sign in our code is a sign not intended to be permanent. Well, where do you draw the line? When do you start to say, okay, it's been, this amount of time, so now we need to think about the next thing. So that's one example. In this case, we're recommending 6 months. Another one is with real estate offices, especially if they're open to walk-in traffic. So, those are some of those uses that are intended to bring foot traffic downtown, to get people to go into shops, into restaurants, and to create some, bodies on sidewalks, some vitality. Unfortunately, open to walk-in traffic, again, there's really no line. Where do you draw a line? And so really this is a 2-pronged approach. One is really that's probably more of an office type use anyway, instead of a retail services type function. And then the other one is, okay, if we're going to say something is open for retail or services, let's define a minimum threshold. It's probably less of an important aspect in our, the peripheral areas of our commercial business zones, but in the central business district, it's pretty critical. So what we've done in that case is said, okay, if it's going to be a retail sales or services use, we should set some sort of reasonable threshold per month, just so that we have a line. I'll be honest, that line is somewhat arbitrary, trying to find a reasonable number that, allows life to happen, but also is, reasonable for wanting traffic. And so, we chose 60 hours. Thought that was fairly reasonable. However, certainly we're open to any suggestions or changes to that. But with that, I'd turn it back over for any questions.
I don't have any questions, but I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 21-2024 on first reading and set the matter for a reading and public hearing on October 2nd, 2024 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter as the matter may be heard.
Second.
Righty, let's go ahead and start voting.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
the motion carried unanimously.
Awesome. So moving on. Sorry, we will look now at first reading and introduction ordinance number 22-2024 and an ordinance establishing a vacant building registration requirement in the central business district, setting forth maintenance requirements and penalties therewith.
Thank you. So this is the second of the two Main Street Advisory Committee recommendations. And just like Mr. Abbey said, that these are intended to give at least a little bit of a nudge. These are not meant to be a punitive sort of action, but the reality is vacant properties are not only a detriment to the local economy, they're also a pretty big drain on our staff, whether it's the building department, development services, and especially code enforcement. Especially perfect example is the courthouse. When that was vacant for years, sometimes it was hard to get a hold of the owner. You didn't know who the owner was. And, maybe there's a snowstorm or maybe there's a window that gets broken and, it's something that's urgent that needs some attention. Sometimes we're scrambling, figuring out, who do we contact? And so really the intention of this ordinance is to create a registration program. It doesn't force somebody to do something with their property, but it does allow us to have a little bit more oversight and communication with that owner. Maybe apply a little bit of uncomfortability to at least, say, hey, this property is being underutilized. You don't have to do anything with it, but at the bare minimum, it has to be maintained. And so effectively what this ordinance does is it gives us that kind of extra tool and also allows for an offset of those costs. So staff recommends that any fees that are collected with this would go back towards code enforcement because, abatement is not an easy or cheap sort of thing when it comes to it. This ordinance is largely structured off of the City of Pueblo's vacant building registration. And the way that we've proposed it is it just applies to the central business district. We are also recommending that this goes into effect at the beginning of 2025. So that will give us a little bit of time to put together some sort of, process and reach out to people. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. There's certainly a number of changes that could be made.
And Mayor Pro Tem, I just want to jump in on both of these issues for the public watching. City Council did hold a joint work session with the Main Street Committee, and there was quite a bit of discussion of pros and cons and alternatives. So I know this might be moving fast, but there was a work session that was held to really dive into these topics before coming before you officially.
Thank you very much for pointing that out.
Yeah. I'm not sure
Counselor
on it.
Carson?
If everybody's ready, we'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 22-2024 on first reading, set that matter for second reading and public hearing on October 2nd, 2024 at 7 PM or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard.
Second.
All righty. Let's go ahead and start voting.
And actually, Mayor, I get the sense that council is ready to vote, but typically you might want to call for discussion just in case something triggered in someone's mind.
I think we're missing, oh, it's me.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
the motion carried unanimously.
All righty. So we're on to the first reading and introduction ordinance number 23-2024, an ordinance amending mobile food vending regulations.
Thank you. So this is the third ordinance that we discussed on July 31st. This one does not come from the Main Street Advisory Committee, and this is certainly a little bit more of a delicate one where we're constantly trying to strike a balance between brick and mortar establishments and more entrepreneurial ventures, and it's not an easy balance. So currently, just a very high level summary of the way that our mobile food vending ordinance works is that food trucks can't park in public parking lots or on city streets, except that there's some exceptions for certain public parks. Food trucks have to be at least 200 feet away from a brick and mortar establishment. And there's actually a specific way that that gets measured without going into the weeds on that. And that 200 foot buffer can be reduced as long as they've got the sign off from everyone within that 200 feet. So in general, most places that could meet all of the other regulations, like not blocking a sidewalk or not being in front of a fire hydrant and things of that nature, that really does kind of limit the available spaces in Alamosa to probably less than a dozen locations. Where that 200-foot restriction comes in, that opens up a handful of additional ones, but typically you don't have multiple, potential locations also with more than one brick and mortar establishment. So the way that this proposed ordinance is to work is really just trying to tweak and find some different balances. So over the last about 4 years, we've seen a threefold increase in the amount of mobile food vending truck applications that we see. So it's still not a huge number. It's about a dozen now. It used to be about 3 or 4 just right before the pandemic. And so what this would do, what we have proposed is reducing that distance from brick and mortar from 200 feet to 100 feet, requiring a majority of business owners instead of a unanimous sort of every business owner to sign off on a reduction of that distance, allowing mobile food vending on vacant lots as long as it's got some sort of surface. And this would be a good time to point out that if you have a paved parking lot, that's actually a principal land use that's developed. So essentially what this would open up is if you have a lot that's surfaced with like gravel, it's not just mud, but something that's substantial enough that it would be allowed there. It would allow licensed vendors to operate in the city right of way or other parking lots during special events. So if there's a block party or some other special event, that there would be a special exemption and somewhat of a process for that. And then also it just kind of cleans up some various inconsistencies. One thing that we discussed on July 31st was the option of opening up certain city parking lots and also certain public rights of way where it might make sense to allow mobile food vendors. That will be addressed at the next meeting, kind of based on how this conversation goes. That will just give us enough direction to make a proposal. And that would be done with a separate action through resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have questions or comments?
Question, you mentioned the festival piece. So let's say we go with this, what would that look like?
So San Juan, let's say San Juan shuts down for the 4th of July block party. I think that's the scenario that's in a lot of folks' mind. Essentially, as a part of that process, a mobile food vendor would be allowed to establish, themselves in the presence of that without having to, get permission for that buffer reduction. So they would still have to coordinate with other folks, the operators of that event. But essentially, if it's a special event, they kind of get exempted from all the other requirements.
And is an exemption with that the 100-foot, 200-foot thing?
That's correct.
Okay, so, okay, all right, thank you.
Mayor Coleman?
Yes, thank you. Deacon, we received an email earlier today from, I believe, the Golf Course Knee Knockers restaurant out there. How would special events affect that area as well? Because I think in that email, they made comments that it could take away from their business, and they're not close to the downtown. So all the business that they do get an opportunity to take in from their events, it's really helpful for them to not have a lot of competition right by them.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of protective mechanisms sort of within that, within the way that this ordinance is structured. So the first one is whoever is coordinating that event would have to also sign off. And so since I imagine that the golf course is already an integral part of any of those events, that they at least have an option to have some sort of say-so in the matter. The other potential protection in there is whatever is adopted as far as an opportunity area that's city-owned, it would also have to be signed off, by City Council. So we aren't proposing using that as a potential site. And especially, we have a vested interest as a city in their success because they are a lessee of the city. So we don't want to undercut, an existing business by any means.
And if I can just say it slightly different, so it's the same thing Deacon just said, but just slightly different. Essentially, since Mr. Valdez, they operate that facility. If there's a special event out there, they would be the ones involved in authorizing that special event, and they can make that a condition that there are no food trucks. So they would have control over that situation, at least any that we anticipate type of situation. So I'm saying it just a slightly different way.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question on that, just to make sure I understand. So on the parking lot, that difference between vacant lot and parking lot. So let's use the golf course as an example. So would that be considered, and obviously let's take away all the other stuff, but let's just use that parking lot. Would that be then where somebody could put a truck, you know, a mobile vending truck, or is that not because it truly is a parking lot?
Since it's city-owned, it adds an extra dimension into it. So it wouldn't be allowed unless council specifically authorized it, you know, for a certain, you know, designated it as a place to be. If it were a private parking lot, which it's not, then, you know, it would be allowed to be established there.
And Deacon, correct me if I'm wrong, because I get turned around sometimes on this. The item you referenced is going to come up at the next meeting, that resolution. Is that resolution going to be where council can identify some of the city property that it is okay allowing it? So at that point in time, I think that discussion would be very relevant.
Perfect. That helps. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 23-2024 on second reading.
I'll second that.
So it's on first reading and and setting it for the public hearing on October 2nd.
I stand corrected. I move that we approve ordinance number 23-2024 on first reading and set it for a second reading and public hearing on October 2nd. Geez.
I will second that.
All righty, go ahead and start voting.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
the motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
All righty, number 4, quarterly update on housing and downtown plans.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. So this is our quarterly housing and downtown update. I will admit that for 1 month of this, I was not even in the office, but I have a spectacular staff, as you can tell, and they handled it beautifully. So we'll start with downtown. So first slide, please. I know it seems like a minor project, but this RRFB project, technically Heather was the one that got the funding for it before I even started working for the city. So the fact that we carried this project for that many years and worked through some pretty amazing CDOT regulations. I don't know if you know, but there were 27 pages of stormwater permitting to get these approved. I know that you don't really think about stormwaters and pedestrian crossings, but evidently CDOT does. So it's done. We did a beautiful ribbon cutting. I think that they're working. I mean, just my personal experience downtown, I think there's a little bit of a learning curve in getting people to stop. But for the most part, I think that they're starting to recognize the pedestrians, and then we've added that layer of pedestrian safety at those additional intersections. So I think CDOT was really glad to get this project off their books, and I know that staff was happy to get it done. It was kind of a Herculean effort for our streets division. They worked really hard getting it fixed and getting it all put together. And, you know, I think everyone underestimated how thick that concrete is on 6th Street. So it's done, and we couldn't be happier about it. And then our Hunt Avenue redesign is nearing 90%. So that's a huge milestone. I mean, CDOT has been telling us that they have a lot of people that were in the same round of funding as us that are at like 30%. And so we've really expedited that design process, and we have a really beautiful product. We've gotten some of the cut sheets for the streetscape improvements and the landscaping. And if you can just sort of like imagine a park that's integrated into a street is really what we've created on Hunt Avenue. And it's really beautiful. And hopefully at some point we have some renderings and a couple more slides that I can show you, but hopefully we have something that's got a little more oomph, because the renderings are good, but I don't know if they convey how really special the space is going to be. So if we want to go to the next slide. Absolutely, yeah.
So when we were doing First Fridays, Biana was showing me the 3 designs. Did we settle on whether we're gonna do one of each? Do you remember we had talked about that, Biana? So we're gonna do one of each to make it, okay, well, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, so we are. So like, again, I can explain it a little bit better. And there are, and I think one more slide, there's some renderings, but they're a little bit small. So the block closest, so if you kind of see there, it's not great, but the block closest to the park and the river is the river themed block. And so there's cobalt blue elements, there's something that looks like river lines that goes through the crosswalks. There's river lines that go through the sidewalks. It's just a lot of elements that sort of tie our connection to the Rio Grande into the first block of Hunt. Then the next block of Hunt is tying in the sand dunes. And so there's a motif of the sand dunes done in colored concrete on the seat walls. There's different landscape elements that sort of evoke the feeling of the sand dunes, the whole color palette and plant palette sort of it does the xeric sort of a things that you'd find in the sand dunes. And then the next block and kind of the next block and a half are railroad themed. And so we have that little small block that's next to the visitor center's new RV parking lot. It's kind of too small to do a full treatment on. So the block south of Main Street and that block are railroad themed. And that means that there's like in the sidewalk is sort of an embedded like a railroad track type of a theme. Railroad themed in the crosswalks is one of the things we're trying to have them encourage now. But it does, as you move through Hunt Avenue, you sort of experience these different facets of Alamosa. So it's really very cool. We can go back. It's not very often that we get to say we secured $2 million for downtown, but we did. I hear that Harry and our mayor and Deacon did a beautiful job presenting to the EIAF board for DOLA, knocked it out of the park, and they were funded $2 million to do 3 alleys downtown. It's going to be the 3 alleys that are facing 6th Street, which they really need it. There's a lot of damage to the pavement there. You know, there's need to do corrals for the dumpsters. There's needs to do streetscape improvements and make it more pedestrian friendly, lighting, all the beautification and elements that we love so much. We promise it'll be more than string lights. But yeah, it's a really cool project. Yes.
Do we have long-term vision of getting all alleys north and south of Main?
We do. So the reason that the ones that were chosen are off of 6th Street is one, because we really want to enliven 6th Street. We want people that are driving down 6th Street, because there's not as many businesses, to see something really beautiful and show how alive and vibrant Alamosa is. But the other thing is that there's not as many drainage issues on those blocks. And so ultimately, when we applied for this, when we wrote the grant, it was maybe for one block, right? So it was like $2 million to do one block of downtown, because it was a full excavation replacing all the utilities. And then part of the negotiations after we were awarded the grant was thinking about kind of like turning the idea on its head and saying, you know, actually, if we did sort of a more superficial treatment on the alleys that don't need the full excavation, can we do more alleys? And the more we explored it with Harry and did new cost estimates, we said, hey, like, we don't have to do the full excavation. We can actually line the sewer lines, which achieves our needs there. We don't have to do as many stormwater improvements on those south-facing alleys. We get basically the same product, but we get more of it. Unfortunately, the alleys on the north side of Maine have really serious drainage issues. And so I don't know, I mean, anyone who's experienced the alleys behind like Del Mar, there's like an ocean there in the winter and it turns into an ice skating rink. And it's really dangerous. And there's not a really good way to fix that without really excavating the whole alley and putting in a lot of really like heavy duty stormwater management stuff. So that's why the plan for those would be in the future. But again, you're talking about the $2 million price tag per alley again. Potentially. A lot of that cost has to do with undergrounding the utilities. And one of the partners that we had on this project is Excel Energy. They're actually kind of providing the match. And they really, really helped us come up with some creative ideas that involve consolidating the poles and making them taller instead of actually undergrounding everything while still being able to help provide us match. So it's a great project, great partnerships, and it's going to be really cool. Okay. So they did do that First Fridays outreach and they talked to 80 people, which like in the planning world is a really big deal that they got that many people to have conversations with them about Hunt Avenue. So they showed people renderings. They had great conversations with some of the businesses along Hunt and talked to Porter Realty and talked to Chuck Sue and just, you know, good conversations. We're able to show people like kind of what it's going to feel like. and the pedestrian improvements. And so that was our first Friday's outreach. Anyone that needs to do outreach, I really recommend tying it to an event because you get people that will stop and talk. And then we do our monthly meeting with CDOT. Again, we're ahead of schedule. We're doing great. We had DCI come talk to our Main Street Committee, talk through some of the nuances of all the different improvement districts that Matt sort of referenced earlier. I think they're kind of the experts on the subject matter, and it was nice to just sort of have that sort of explanation there. So they did that in June. And then Mayor Pro Tem and I met Capital One, investors from Capital One, for a new market tax credit site visit for the courthouse in July. So talking about doing some pretty serious investment in our downtown to get Valley-Wide's vision realized for the courthouse. So that's the end of downtown. Horizon Heights is open. Great ribbon cutting. Overall, I think that the stories coming out of that community are really beautiful. I wish Dawn Melgar, as the executive director of the Housing Coalition, was here because she really, she almost made our coordinators from the Behavioral Health Administration cry when we talked to them recently, talking about some of the stories about people that are housed there and how meaningful that housing is and what a community they are already, that there's a gentleman out there that picks up trash every day. And they watch him on the cameras, and that when one person gets like a piece of furniture or a blanket or something they don't need, they go door to door and they try to share it with their neighbors, and that there are already trying to work on their garden boxes and decorate their homes. And again, how meaningful and powerful this housing is for the residents out there. So that's done. It's a beautiful project. Next, we applied for a kind of small grant with Boyd, but it's $164,000 and it will go towards replacing all of the sidewalks on that block. So it's an important infrastructure need. Unfortunately, the More Housing Now program only funds horizontal costs, so it only funds infrastructure, and the 1.1 million grant that we got in the last few months is covering most of the rest of those. So still great money to go towards Boyd. It's just we usually don't apply for grants that are that little. So, but every bit helps. Final thing is that we did receive a grant for technical assistance. So these are kind of housing experts and finance experts that have been assigned to us from DOLA that will help us really bring to life the plan or a plan that came out of the housing action guidelines that tells us how we should deal with dilapidated homes and how we get them back in circulation, how we help homeowners fix dilapidated homes, how the city potentially can end up acquiring those homes, and how we get basically some of the conversations we've been having about these homes that fall into disrepair. And then eventually we're having conversations about the city tearing them down. We'd like to get to a point as a city where we never have to have those conversations again, that we have a really strong program, not necessarily through the city. I don't know what these solutions will look like, but maybe it's partnering with local banks or local contractors or teaching skills so that people can do the sort of deferred maintenance so that their house is never, they're never in a bad situation with our code enforcement officers, and we're never having conversations about a structure being so unsafe that we have to tear it down. And then beyond that, just these houses that are empty and not doing anything, like how do we motivate people to get these back into circulation? So technical experts, investment experts, there's bankers on this team, community builders, and then a company out of New York called Enterprise. And so I do think that whatever product comes out of this, I think will be pretty powerful. It's a little bit on hold right now because they're doing some shakeups at the state level, but technically the funding is secured and we have started the process with them. CRHDC has transitioned away from the architect that we've been working with for 3 years, whom we dearly love. And his part in it is done because we're getting ready to start construction. And so the project management team is on. We got to meet them. It's a huge team and all experts. And that was a kind of a cool watershed moment to see the project evolve to that next step for getting ready to actually break ground. Planning Commission was out at Horizon Heights twice doing tours, and we meet with the Behavioral Health Administration regularly, telling them about what's going on out there. So those are the things we've been up to the last 3 months, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, comments? Thank you for all you do. Your team is fantastic, and this is all exciting stuff. Oh, I apologize, Mayor Coleman.
Yes, I just want to thank Rachel and her team and the city staff as well as council. It's very good to hear these quarterly updates so that people in the community can see all the work and the good work that the city is doing to make a positive difference in our community. And none of these things wouldn't be possible without the hard work and dedication of our staff as well as council. And it's just really good and refreshing to see us implement and have a lot of these things happening in our community. So thank you all.
One more thing. I don't think that we realized it until recently, but, and I talked to someone recently who's kind of a leader in the community that didn't know, but we're almost at $10 million that the city's brought in grants just for housing. I mean, that's a big deal. We're like less than $200,000 away from it, from the $10 million mark. So it's very cool. Okay, thank you.
Great job. All righty, so moving on to police. We have a public hearing and second reading on ordinance number 19-2024, an ordinance amending sections 11-49, 11-53, and 11-99 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alamosa to prohibit sitting and lying down on public right-of-way, to amend details of the trespassing ordinance, and to remove the requirement that shelter or campground space be available before citing someone for unauthorized camping on public property.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. As we discussed at first reading of this ordinance, that title really is a very good summary of what the ordinance does. And I don't know if you need much further discussion from me. You will, before getting into the public hearing, I'm sure we'll hear from Mr. Feliu, who said he was going to speak on this matter at the public hearing. He did present at first reading a written submission similar, I think, to what he's presented here, that staff considered between first and second reading. Staff does not recommend adopting those, but certainly council can consider the recommendations that Mr. Feliu both made and I think will make. At first reading, you will also recall with respect to the change to the trespass ordinance that makes it a trespass to return to a property within a certain amount of time when you have been told to leave. As originally written, the ordinance set 24 hours as that period of time, but council's direction after first reading was to change it to 72 hours. And that's what's now in the materials before you for second reading. So unless council has further questions, I think we're ready for the public hearing.
All right, so we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. We'll start off with anybody who is here in our presence right here, and then we'll move on to anybody who's online. So is there anybody who would like to speak to this? Hi. When you come up, if you could, we all know you, but for just official purposes, if you could state your name.
Sure. Hi, my name is Manny Feliu. I'm a resident here in town. I already spoke earlier on 11-53 change, the idea that we could provide a resource guide before removing or citing anyone who might be camping. I'll speak now on the proposed amendment to section 11-49. This proposed amendment, I believe, is largely superfluous. Our current ordinances already grant officers the authority to order an individual to move on the grounds of obstruction, trespass, or proximity to hazards. The adoption of this proposed amendment would extend that authority, allowing officers to order an individual to move and cite them without any of those justifications. At least that is my understanding of the reading. This could lead to unnecessary criminalization of individuals for simply being present in our public byways and areas without posing any legitimate threat or obstruction. Such a broad authority could have unintended consequences, particularly for those who are already vulnerable. In addition, I believe the jamming up of courts and officer times with frivolous citations, which without the justified cause of obstruction, hazard, or trespass, this surely would cause, I don't believe to be a good or moral decent use of our tax dollars and the time of our community officers, administrators, and associated public servants. I respectfully urge the council to reconsider these amendments with the goal of maintaining public safety while upholding the dignity and rights of all of our citizens.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Una King and my thoughts are not as formal as that. But I did read the recommended action and the background information, and I thought it was really interesting that the city of Durango and their ordinances were mentioned. I went to Adams State and graduated in 2018. Then I spent 4.5 years in Durango through La Puente's RAD AmeriCorps program. I was at the soup kitchen, and then I worked in the shelter system. And all that to say, I don't think that Durango is especially welcoming to the homeless population. And it's not a city whose ordinances are needed to be adopted. It shouldn't be a race to the bottom is something that someone had said at another meeting, which I really think is good wording. The sit and lie ban is not addressing any root causes of homelessness, and people who are experiencing homelessness are going to be disproportionately impacted. It's just an out of sight, out of mind kind of move. And I think instead, compassion, ingenuity, and resources need to be available, even if that's just benches that people can sit on if you're not allowing them to sit on the ground. And then I also, the ACLU of Colorado and the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty wrote a report when Durango enacted these or very similar ordinances. And it was called A Year Without Sleep, the criminalization of sleep in Durango, Colorado. And if you have not read it, I think that you should. The fact that it is no longer required that other space be available before prohibiting camping in public spaces isn't good enough. Because it's not required doesn't mean that you shouldn't.
Thank you very much. Anyone here that's in our presence? All right. If we could go ahead and, oh, I apologize. Could you turn on your microphone? Thank you.
Or better yet, move to the taller one, which is already on.
We'll do this. Can you hear me now? All right. My name is Caroline Burkhart and I'm a resident of Alamosa. And I just want to kind of piggyback on, was it Ula's comment over here about replicating what's being done in other cities. This has come up in a few other hearings that I've been at, is that the context that we're talking about and what we want our town, our city to be, doesn't necessarily need to be modeled off other places in Colorado or around the country. That is not our home. And one thing that stood out to me was what Heather was saying, that Alamosa is a contender for being part of a study for the LEAD program, which is pretty unique, right? And kind of here, Alamosa being a contender to be studied and to become a new model for other towns and cities across Colorado and across maybe even the nation, to have a different way of approaching some of our problems. And so I just think that we can't deny the fact that there is the quote unquote easy way to just copy off some of the ordinances of other towns and what their new policies and methods are. And there's the harder way, but I think it's the braver way, where even Alamosa, as small as we are, can be a role model, can be part of those studies of, hey, if we try an alternative method, what would that look like? I am in support of keeping the encampment, and I find it really problematic that there could be citations with the removal of a provision that there is space in a shelter or encampment before someone gets cited. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry that I almost missed you. All right. I'm gonna take a longer pause just to make sure there's nobody else. Okay, I don't see anybody. So Ms. Martinez, will you do the explanation for those that are online?
Yes, ma'am. If you want to speak for this public hearing, you'll use the raise hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're on a telephone, you're going to dial *9. And it doesn't look like anyone's choosing to raise their hand.
All righty. Well, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and I'll bring it back to council for any questions or comments. Go ahead, Counselor Behill.
Thank you, Mayor. I bet I should have asked these questions when we first got this a month ago. But is there a problem with this? Do we have people sitting, kneeling, laying down?
So I think having Chief Dingfelder come up and answer that question would be good.
Good evening, council. So is it abundant? No. But do we see it? Absolutely.
Where?
On Main Street, just even 2 weeks ago, I was up there 7 o'clock in the morning. There were people sleeping in front of, right in front of the brewery. So there's people laying there, sitting there, as well as the curbs. This will also help us address the panhandling for sitting on the curbs. Because this isn't for just downtown. This is citywide. Like out by Walmart and stuff like that. We've had that discussion about, sitting on the curbs and stuff like that. This isn't easy, but this is about making it uncomfortable.
And making it uncomfortable so that what? So that they what? They leave town?
No, not necessarily leave town. That's not what I'm saying. We don't want them, this isn't also about homeless. We've had this discussion. Homelessness is not a crime and it's never going to be a crime. What's a crime is when you're obstructing highways, you're obstructing roadways, you're obstructing sidewalks, disorderly conduct, as we had in the previous meeting. These ordinances are in place for everybody. This isn't just targeting homeless. None of these are targeting homeless. This is targeting anybody. If somebody's sleeping on the sidewalk, whether they're unhoused or not, we want to have the ability to remove them from sleeping on the sidewalk.
And right now we don't. We can't just say, move along, get up, move.
Yeah, we can ask them to move. If they're
Right now, we have an ordinance that prohibits camping in public rights of way, parks, sidewalks. This goes further in prohibiting not just camping, but I think you could also say, long time napping or resting. It does make exceptions, but it would be much more restrictive than our current prohibition, which relates solely to camping.
So right now, and I've got two better legal experts than me. If someone is laying on the sidewalk and blocking the sidewalk, that 3 feet, 4 feet that we have to have from an ADA perspective, my assumption is there's something we can do about that. But when you look at the activated space next to the sidewalk where they're not blocking that area, we have to keep clear from an ADA perspective. If you look at the corners of City Market, Safeway, some of those types of situations, those things where they're not blocking traffic, obviously, and they're not blocking that sidewalk, that 3 to 4 feet that has to be open, my impression is there's nothing really that we can do type of situation. Does that better get at your question on what can we do right now type of thing?
Yeah, I'm just, if we have laws on the books already to address this, then why do we need more?
So the two laws is the no camping, but again, that's like, it has to be like camping. And so if someone's just laying there, so that's that one. And then the only other one is you can't obstruct that 3 to 4 feet on the sidewalk. But when there's buildings that are carved in or the activated space or on those kind of corners type of situation, they're not obstructing it. So there really is not anything to do for that situation.
Okay, so then if we ask them to leave, because we have this in place now, we might have this in place now. Are we saying 72 hours and they can come back? Like,
No, that's a different part of this ordinance, which addresses our Trespass ordinance,
Trespass.
so completely separate
Completely
thing.
separate.
Okay, so then, So then if a person
this-
is sleeping in a door well, like you said, in an indent of a sidewalk into a building, are we gonna ticket them?
No, I mean, that's not our intent, and I've made that very clear. Our intent is not to be writing citations. Whoever the gentleman was earlier here saying about frivolous citations. I don't necessarily take offense to that, but kind of a little bit in the sense that we have to meet a legal probable cause standard on every single arrest and citation that we make. So to say that we're writing frivolous citations, it doesn't necessarily set well with me because of the fact that we don't have time to write these frivolous citations, first and foremost, but absolutely not. This is about education. That's always what it's about, first and foremost, but it gives us the tools to contact people legally. And second of all, we will always try and educate, but if people aren't going to listen, we have like speeding, right? I mean, I was a trooper for 25 years. We always tried to educate. Second or third time, sorry, education isn't working, so we're going to move to a citation. This is never about how many citations that we're going to write. That's not what this is about. And it will never be about how many citations we can write.
Counselor Carson?
So I've been thinking about this and about the trespass, the burglary stuff we did. So I think as a body, if we really want to affect change, we need to look at it differently, okay? We also have to look out for the majority. Now, I get that homeless people, you know, they're having a hard time and it sucks that they could get ticketed for trespassing. But we also have homeowners and citizens and people that are dealing with all these problems every day. And I don't think putting people in jail's a big help either. So one of the things I want us to think about, this is a little off tangent, but from the penal side, most of the things that are happening on the street, these people that are sleeping on the street, and I'm talking from people that I know, people that have dealt with the burglary thing now. Now they're, you know, they can look at a citation or jail time or, you know, if it's repeated. I think what we need to work in is seeing how to have the judge impose some sort of rehabilitation aspect. Now, the guy's talking about a paper that we hand them, you know, you want to hand them before you ticket them. There's a lot of questions there. Who pays for that paper? You know what I mean? Where does that come from? So I think if we really want to make a good effort, we need to look at it broader and look at what's causing all this, what's causing people to sleep on the street. And I think even from the burglary thing that we just passed, again, people that I know personally that are dealing with this and people that I know that are going to catch that charge, sending them to jail isn't going to help them. I think that we need to look at imposing some sort of detox, whether we not force them, but instead of jail, they start participating in the lead or ticketing them and sending, you know what I mean? After when you get to the citation piece, I think addressing the drug piece is important. It's just been bugging me because I think getting somebody for burglary at Walmart and sending them to jail, that person's going to come out. First thing they're going to go do is look for dope. You know, 3 days in jail is not going to fix them. So we need to start looking at it from the root part of the problem too, and why these people are sleeping on the street, why we're dealing with so many people. And a lot of these are young people. You know, they're not your traditional homeless people that Lance and then we're talking about 20, 30 years ago. It's a different facet. A lot of it has to do with the opioid side. And so I just think we need to be looking at it from that aspect too. Instead of just penalizing, we need to start trying to force. I know that's a weird way to look at it because you can't force somebody to stop doing drugs, but they're not going to stop doing drugs, throwing them in jail either. All it's doing is costing us as a city money. We're sending tons of cops to Walmart all the time that costs us money, and we're not getting anything done. This person's going to get back out of jail and go do the same crap unless we start addressing that root cause. And, you know, just like housing, I know we didn't want to be in it, but I think if we're going to ticket people for sitting and lying, I think there needs to be some sort of other piece to that penal side of that. And I'm not against the ticket and the sitting and lying part. You know, we have a ton of that going on. So I think we need to address it. But I think we need to think about the back end of that. And I don't think just jail's the issue. You know what I mean? You have these people that are stealing repeatedly. They're stealing to get drugs, most of them. And forcing some sort of different angle there, I think, is what we need to think about too. So I'm just putting that out there. I don't think we're really helping by just jailing people.
Mayor Coleman?
Yes, thank you. Council Vihil, I think your question that you ask is there a lot of that happening in the town? And the answer is yes. I've received several calls from downtown business owners, people who live nearby Safeway, City Market, Walmart. I've had parents tell me that they used to send their kids to the store to get things for their homes and groceries, but now they're afraid to because of just about every stop sign that's close to one of the big grocery stores. You have someone laying at the corner, or someone who may be just permanently there for most of the day. And they're in fear of their public safety. I have people who call and say, I used to walk downtown, but now I'm afraid to walk downtown because I see people lying outside of some of the storefronts. So I think this is a measure that council has discussed before about putting in place just so that the police department can have some more resources and ways of dealing with that situation that we're having. So to answer your question, Councilor Hill, absolutely yes, it happens in our community.
Okay, then I have to respond to that because, and I'm not questioning you, Chief, about what you want to do here. I'm not second guessing you. But if a month ago, we had a discussion about trying, maybe thinking of closing down St. Ben's. And everybody said that night that the amount of loitering going on through town and in downtown is way low. So is it way low, or can both be happening at the same time? I need help with that.
So I will say, I think we were seeing some lower levels. I don't think there was much change on panhandling at some of the strategic corners. I think that's been a fairly constant. But as far as other type of loitering, but what we've seen ironically is since that meeting, I don't know, through the rumorville, we're closing it. So there's a lot more loitering, a dramatic, noticeable type of loitering. Chief, if you want to talk about that.
So I've been on vacation for 2 weeks and I just came back this week and had my monthly meeting with Heather. And that was the first thing that I observed through our daily reports that we do internally for the police department and stuff. And just noticing it and stuff, since that public meeting, how much more loitering we're seeing downtown, the more calls that we're getting, that camping in other places. And I agree with what Heather said. I think there's this already misperception out there that we've already closed St. Ben's and that it's gone. So I don't know how that got out there, but we are seeing a significant amount more than what we had prior to this. And I mean, it literally started right after after that meeting. So I think there's some miscommunication somewhere.
Can I ask a question, Chief? So do you think the message that we're gonna enforce or that we're gonna be tightening things up out there has moved people out of there, and that's the people that have left, the people that don't want to be, get caught up? To me, that's my theory, is maybe they're like, well, we don't want to get in trouble because we're doing all this bad crap, so we won't stay here anymore.
Yeah, I wish I could answer that, Counselor Carson, because I don't know, but I literally had that discussion with Heather. I'm like, why all of a sudden did this happen that we're seeing a lot more of the unhoused downtown as well as in the parks? We sit here and have staff meetings and you see a whole lot more people walking through the parks. I don't know why, because St. Ben's isn't closed. It's not. And why all of a sudden we have this, I don't know.
Because just keep in mind, Councilor Vihil, one of the reasons that we talked about modifying this ordinance was to kind of cover ourselves for the outflux of people from St.
Exactly.
Ben's. That's one of the reasons that we started talking about this, because we don't have that Supreme Court decision now, or we have it. So that was one of the reasons we need it. And again, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent. I just wanted you to think about that penal side and maybe trying to help some of these people that are users. I know you probably don't, want you know what I mean, but that was my take on it.
Well, and I also want to add a clarification too, that almost goes back to the first question Counselor Vihil kind of raised as far as, you know, the outlawing homelessness type of thing. A lot of the individuals who are doing the panhandling are not necessarily homeless type of situation. Some of the individuals that may find themselves needing to sleep somewhere or take a nap somewhere where they shouldn't be are not necessarily homeless. I know a lot of this conversation is focused on this as impacting homeless, and it definitely will. But it's also some nuisance behavior that is displayed by individuals that are not necessarily always homeless as well. And so I just wanted to share that piece of information.
I just want to reiterate real quick. We are not about writing citations. This has always been my philosophy. When 25 years with State Patrol, 4 years in Monte Vista, it's not, you can't accomplish any of this through just enforcement. Enforcement's a very important piece. It really is. But you always start with education and try and education. I mean, some crimes, obviously, you can't just say, okay, you know, you committed a murder, so we're going to educate you. No, that's obviously not. But there's some things, but some of these low-level things, even like speeding when I was a trooper, I can't reiterate that how many times I would give people a break and try and educate them. And I've taken that philosophy with the police department here. To think that everybody that we come in contact with, I would say less than 10% of the people that we come in contact with get some kind of a citation and stuff. And that's through traffic and every other type of minor little things that we do, because it's always about education. But there are some people that are hard-headed, and absolutely the only way to get through them is a citation. And that's what the ordinances and laws are for. And that's when we use them.
Counselor Dominguez?
I have a few questions. First one is, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Christina, but do you see an influx of them moving from St. Benedict's into town?
And if you could come up to a microphone for our Zoom participants.
Yeah, whoever's closest to that population.
Good evening, everybody. Hey, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak on the homeless community. I do street outreach a lot, and I don't see what we're being told here. I don't believe that everybody that's panhandling is not homeless, but I don't see a lot of loitering or a lot of sleeping on sidewalks. I do around, and I even do a lot more, but I don't see that.
Okay.
In fact, we just had a meeting out there at St. Ben's, and I don't see what's being said.
Okay,
So I
thank
don't
you.
see a lot of that.
Thank you. And
Well, I'll just tell you this, reiterate this. I have mine on body camera. We had 4 guys sleeping on, so anybody wants to see the body camera, more than happy to show you that. 4 people sleeping right there in front of, like 2 weeks right before I went on vacation. So more than welcome to look at the body camera.
so the other comment I wanted to make was, I understand where Chief's coming from. I actually have witnessed a lot of these scenarios, and it's not just homeless, it's other individuals too. And I've actually been close to a few of the incidents because of where my daughter works. And I just want to say that if there's anything that's hindering the police department from attending to this, I think they need to have them tools. I'm not gonna speak on behalf and say that this is against all homeless. I appreciate what you all have come up and talked about. These things are true that you spoke of, but there are a certain population that do not, unfortunately, they do not listen, and it is hindering to businesses, property owners, and even things we were able to do in the past, like going to the store or send our kids in, is something that I can't do either no more. And I'm not saying this is the whole population, but there are some individuals, and I can probably count 4 or 5 of them that I know this is what this came from, not only in just our conversation, but in emails to me and in community. So I trust Chief knows what he's doing, and his department knows what they're doing from a strategic way, and I put my trust in that.
Counselor Carson?
I'd like to make a motion
Okay, I'd like to say something first, just real quick. So I guess what I would say, just to add a little bit, is I also sort of support what, well, I do support what Counselor Dominguez, and it seems like what most everyone does. I also will add is, I know there's discussion in regards to putting more rules at St. Benedict's as we move forward. And so I do think that at some point we may have more of an influx also of people that will leave St. Benedict's just because of things that they're doing and the rules that we'll put into place. So I also support having another tool for the police to have just in case. And again, if we don't have to use this tool, that's awesome, but it's good to have that tool there just in case. So now go ahead, sorry.
We're good. I'm gonna make a motion that we pass ordinance 19-2024 on second reading.
I'll second.
All right, let me get this set up so you can vote. There we go.
Mayor Coleman,
Yes.
I'm missing one. Okay, give me 1 second. I can't see the votes. Okay, the motion carried 4-1 with Counselor Yon V Hill casting the no vote.
So would it be 5-1?
5-1, yeah, sorry. I'm looking at the screen.
No,
Forgot
right.
Mayor
4
Coleman's.
electronic votes and 1 voice vote.
Yes.
Yes, 5-1.
All righty, thank you. We're gonna go ahead now then and city manager legal. And we got a motion directing staff on whether to move forward with the design of the soup kitchen, low barrier shelter, formerly a low barrier cold weather shelter.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. As council is aware, because I think we've been working on this for over a year, to look at moving the soup kitchen operations only. So the shelter located on State Avenue would stay, the kitchen would serve those residents staying at the shelter. But the portion of the soup kitchen that kind of is almost more like a commercial activity in a residential neighborhood, look at moving that activity into a new facility located just south of St. Benedict. As those kind of discussions were brewing, the creation of St. Benedict's during the cold weather months, council many times would struggle with what should be added to St. Benedict's, what shouldn't be added, for residents who are out there during those cold weather months. And so, those types of concerns would occur annually when we got into those cold weather months. And so what kind of came together is, what if we construct a facility that during the daytime would operate as the soup kitchen? And so it would be designed with a commercial kitchen. There'd be tables. We would also look at putting offices there, and street outreach would look to locate out into those offices. And then at night, the tables could be folded up, put away, and cots could be brought out during the cold weather months. And then next day, the cots go up and the tables come out, and it operates as a soup kitchen. So there was some preliminary design and buy-in from both La Puente and the city to move forward with this concept. The only other item that did get added to it is, as the homeless coalitions worked on identifying gaps and needs for a homeless perspective, the need for showers was something that became very significant. So showers were also going to be included in that design. And so for the past year, working collaboratively, we've applied for grants for the design and engineering. The total construction cost of the facility, we anticipate to be approximately $2 million. But if it were to be a year or two out before construction happens, there might need to be escalation for that price. The cost for the design and engineering was estimated at $240,000, and we were successful in securing $145,000 in grants to go towards that. So everything was on schedule to do that. Staff did open a request for qualifications and did select a preferred engineering firm for that. And then suddenly the Supreme Court made their decision, and we thought, oh, we may need to put this on hold for 1 second because we knew city council was getting ready to hold a public meeting, and any decision you would be making with St. Benedict's could have a connection to this facility. It may not for others, type of situation. So when council held that public meeting, the concerns that were expressed by individuals wishing to close St. Benedict more would be they would be applicable for this type of facility as well. And so it kind of depends on how much those concerns resonated with city council. And those concerns, if I were to summarize them, it's two different kind of categories. One category was the location of St. Benedict's, that location has the impact on the industrial park properties, the impact on the neighborhood just north of it, and the location next to recreational facilities. And so there is testimonies you heard related to concerns based on location. The other type of category of concerns related to St. Benedict was if it would serve as an attraction to those from outside the valley type of situation. And as I watched council kind of weigh the information provided and kind of what seemed to resonate with you, what my concern became is these two categories would apply to this facility, in my opinion. It's the same location. And if someone felt that St. Benedict's was an attraction, I would argue an overnight shelter in cold weather would be just as much of an attraction, if not more. And so what I wanted to do is to bring this before you for you to vote, because we have not spent those grant funds. We can return the grant funds. And my preference would be is unless council is committed to moving forward with the construction, I don't want to use our credibility to design a facility that we then don't do, because those funders will expect for us to move forward with construction. Now, I wish we had more time for you to see how the new rules work out at St. Benedict, to see how enforcement works. But if we're going to be realistic, by the time we get the rules up, we're already doing enforcement of the current rules. But once we, do even more enforcement and see how all of that goes, I doubt you're going to close it in the middle of winter time. So I would think probably a final decision would be closer to April. I already have to start reporting on the grants because some of them are over a year old, and our engineer's not going to hold the price until April. So that was just from a city manager perspective. I need to bring this back to you. The other thing that changed from when we started to now is that as La Puente's further evaluated the facility, they have modified their need from it to be just a low barrier cold weather shelter. So it would only have been operated during the cold weather months, to where they needed to operate year round. I did attach some of the communication from La Puente to this that went over their reasons. They're also here if you have questions on that. But during those discussions, I tried to get as clear direction from them as possible on how strongly they felt that it needed to be this year round. And for them, it is a line in the sand that if it's not something council is comfortable with, then they're not comfortable operating the facility. And I should have started way back at the beginning. How this was going to be structured is that the city owns the property, would own the building. We would all fundraise together to try to get the money for the construction and all of that. And then La Puente would have a lease to operate both the soup kitchen and the emergency or the cold weather shelter. So obviously this doesn't work if they're not interested in operating it, because the city does not operate soup kitchens and the city does not operate shelters. So unless you want to take us into a brand new area, that being an important line in the sand for La Puente is something that you do need to consider. And so with that, I'll turn it over to council for any questions and comments.
Just so we're clear, if this,
Coach B.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry, Mayor, sorry. If this is built, who will run it?
The idea was that La Puente would run it, but if we don't change it from a low barrier cold weather shelter to a year-round low barrier, they are not interested in that agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Carson?
So just, I'm not opposed to the year round because I see that, like the new food, the soup kitchen's gonna bring maybe more people to that neighborhood. It's gonna change the dynamic a little bit. That swelling that we would see at lunch, may come back during times of, distribution. So I think it would be a good idea. I mean, originally I thought should have been a year-round shelter anyway. That was my original intent in the move. So I'm more than happy to change my direction and make it a year-round type shelter as long as La Puente is willing to take on the operation. Because I think it makes more sense and it does eventually, not eventually, but it'll immediately change the dynamic of that population in that neighborhood. So.
I'm gonna go Counselor Vihel and then Mayor Coleman.
So I have a question. So are the rules different for the soup kitchen than they are at La Puente? Are they less stringent? And so I know a lot of people don't stay at La Puente because they don't want to follow the rules or they can't or whatever. So are they less stringent
So
in this?
Judy, if you want to get up, because I think there's a difference between the rules as it relates to who stays in the shelter versus who can be served from the soup kitchen.
Yeah, just to clarify, if you come to the shelter, you are given an intake. We're talking about what they're going to be doing. They have their own place to sleep and a bed. They don't have to be moving in and out and doing things. And there's expectations that they're following rules. They're also working with people about looking for employment, looking for housing. They help with cleaning up. Everybody gets assigned chores. Everybody helps keeping it as part of the facility. This shelter would be folks that it's basically it's more of an urban model. It's somebody's gonna come in at, I'm guessing 9 o'clock. You're gonna have a cot, you're gonna spend the night, you're gonna get up and leave in the morning. So it's for folks that we need to give that basic security to, but they're not yet ready to move to that next level. I would hope that if you're moving your items back and forth every single day, it would be nicer to stay in a shelter where you actually can put things away, people, they're supporting you. But a lot of our folks, either because of trauma, addiction, behavioral health issues, they have a pet. There's a variety of reasons why they can't stay at the shelter. So we see this more as kind of a continuum. You're basically going to meet the basic needs of people so that they're going to stay alive with the hope of them moving them. So,
and
different rules.
Were you getting to the soup kitchen? So the rules related to who can use the soup kitchen at State Avenue would be the same as who can access the soup kitchen if it's moved to south of St. Ben's.
Right, the soup kitchen now is for community and for folks staying there. My understanding is if we had a soup kitchen at St. Ben's, we would only be serving the folks that are staying in the shelter. Right now, even people coming in, there are some folks that we don't turn them away for food, but they can't come in because of they're not participating in the chores, they're threatening staff for whatever reason. We will take food to them at the gate, but they can't come in and be in community. So we don't turn the food away, but it isn't a matter of you can come in and sit.
So are you gonna have certain hours of operation, like they have to be there by 10 o'clock at night in order to sleep there, or is this gonna be just come as you want?
In my mind, no, I think you would have to have a set time where people show up. Even right now, we can on a limited basis have what we call a cot night. So if there's somebody that is not checked into the shelter, but is a more vulnerable person, we need to be able to provide that. We're doing that on a limited basis where they can check in, sleep on a cot, they get out and leave. We leave it up pretty much to the discretion of the overnight staff of what they're comfortable with. If they're comfortable with 2 cots, that's all we do. We've had other people who will say, I could do 5 cots and I'm comfortable, but I'm not going to push the night staff to do more than what they're comfortable with in terms of that, just for safety for folks. So yes, I would imagine people would check in, get a place to sleep on their cot, and they would be leaving as well.
I'm good. Okay, Mayor Coleman.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Originally, what council agreed to and what we were talking about originally, we were basing our decisions on the soup kitchen being a cold weather shelter for low barrier types of people who may come in. This is a complete deviation from what we originally had intentions for. This will take it to a year-round low barrier shelter, to where that means every day in the evening, the people who, if I'm not mistaken, who are not able to be housed in the current housing facility where La Puente is, or St. Benedict's, the low barrier people will be occupying that location. My concerns are, this is not what the people asked for. This is not what they agreed to. This is not what we talked about. It's unfortunate that I'm pretty sad that La Puente has put the line in the sand in this manner, because I don't think we had to do that. I think if we were to continue to leave it like we originally had the intentions of making it a cold weather shelter, council was on board with doing that, but to make this a year-round shelter, I think it would not be prudent for us to do that, because that's not what the people asked for. And then with the public sentiment that we received over the past several months regarding other issues that we're having problems with, we really need to make sure that we're listening to the whole community. And those are my comments.
Can I make a point of clarification?
Sure.
I don't think we would imagine that we would start on day one with a full-time year-round shelter, but I know the La Puente Board has committed a financial and a commitment to going forward. It's really looking at what's going to look like 5 years from now. We don't know. Right now, the shelter is not at full capacity. So maybe we won't ever need this, but we really don't know what's happening. And so I think in terms of a fiscal impact, to do a short-term overnight, I need to hire somebody that's going to work for me 4 months a year and then have to rehire them again. Just logistically, running a part-time shelter is going to be problematic. I don't think we envision on day one having a full-blown 365 day. I think it would have to be a transition in based on what the need was for the community and also for the fiscal impact of what La Puente would be able to do.
But I want to make sure, I don't want there to be any confusion. The reason that it wouldn't start full blown is because of the building up the capacity in order to do it. The conversation we had was extremely clear that if the capacity was to have staff from day one and have the resources from day one, what they want is a year-round shelter. And so the buildup is related more to resources and not that they don't want a year-round shelter type of situation. So I don't want there to be any confusion by that last little piece, because I don't want us to move forward and council be like, oh, well, they said starting out and we'll see. And then in 5 years, when it's what their intentions was to build to a year-round shelter, people be shocked and surprised, because we need to be crystal clear on that point.
That the community would need to know it would be year-round. Yes.
Counselor
And then if I could just finish up on that part.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
As the city manager stated in her opening comments, the concern that I have is the reputation that the city currently has in regards to us following up and following through on the grants that we do receive. What puts us at risk right now, council, is if we are not able to move forward with the soup kitchen, with the funds that we have, and we start running behind on reporting and things like that. So, and if we don't have clarity from La Puente right now, I would probably recommend us to return the grant funds and then maybe bring this up at a later time so that the city can maintain its reputation with following up and following through and meeting all the deliverables that are required for a grant.
All right, Counselor Behill.
Thank you, Mayor. A question, if this were to be built, what would happen to St. Ben's?
So St. Ben's can still be for if an individual that may not want the overnight shelter, they're not going to have any location really for their stuff type of situation during the day, a place to go during the day. What I envision St. Benedict for is if we were to manage to solve the housing crisis, there's no way to solve homelessness at the national level. And so I do feel like there's always going to be transient homelessness that comes through our community. And St. Ben's is a place that they can land for the few days before they move on type of situation. So there's always potentially from that latter perspective, the need from a St. Ben's before the Supreme Court decision type of thing.
So I agree with you, Mayor. We talked about this at a work session, and it was proposed to us that this would be a cold weather shelter, an emergency, if anything, like emergency type of situation. And I do agree with you too, Mayor Coleman, is that maybe a work session or slow down a little bit and let's really iron this out. And if we have to give back the funds and come back later, that's kind of where I'm at too.
I have a major issue with that.
Okay, wait for me. Everybody needs to relax, okay? Thank you. Okay, Counselor Carson.
So you guys are talking about a work session and slowing it down. 6 years ago, we started this conversation. And I never recommended a cold shelter, and I don't know who did. I think that came out of the Homeless Coalition. So, you know, the mayor saying that the community wanted cold weather, I don't agree with that at all. From day one, this is before I ran for council. This is a conversation that I had at La Puente with Donna Wood. Our conversation and our intent from the beginning was, and I know that it wasn't popular, me moving the shelter from state, but the whole intent was get that shelter out of there. The whole thing, not cold weather, not partially, it was move it out of there. From that conversation, St. Ben's came and then all this other stuff came. That I don't agree at all that this is a cold weather shelter. I think if we manage this right, it helps solve a lot of the issues we're dealing with right now, including St. Ben's. You know, you manage it right and you lead people to the services they need during the day, I think it'll help. But I don't recall the community ever speaking out as a whole and saying, well, we just want a cold weather shelter, because that never happened. That conversation didn't happen. The Homeless Coalition may have morphed that, but I honestly don't even know where the just cold weather piece outright came from. It was supposed to be year round from, again, 6 years ago. No, yeah, these are the conversations that we had from the beginning. You may not agree, but that's how it started out.
So we talked about it at a retreat, at a city council retreat. And you're right, Mr. Carson. You've said like that. I don't know. That's why we need to talk about this. I've heard both cold weather and what Carson has said, that we all have had concerns from citizens of where the current shelter is right now on state. And how about there's so much foot traffic and there might be issues, right? And so we've talked that maybe putting a shelter down there by St. Ben's could take care of that. That has been discussed before.
Okay, so I'm gonna add.
Hold on, I wasn't
No,
done.
well, I'm ready for my part now.
Yeah,
So
but
give
I
me one
was-
sec, give me one
Okay,
sec.
go ahead.
So one of the things that I would say is in discussions, the ones that I was more supportive of was the cold weather when we had it at our retreat. I do have first of all, if this shelter is built, it wasn't saying it's shutting down the one on State Street. So this is a whole different type of shelter. So the shelter will still be on State Street. There was talk of moving the soup kitchen. I will tell you, I have huge concern of moving everything or having such a solid base now by the rec center and having our kids by something like this as well. I think there needs to be a lot of research. So my thought would be also is that at this point with the grant is maybe we take time, and if this is something we want to rehash, but at the same time for right now, I'm not supportive of all the changes that were happening from it being a cold weather thing. So now you can go ahead.
The cold weather part came from when Counselor Daniels and them were the action plan they had in the winter, they were doing the churches and it was kind of dynamic. And then, so that's what really kind of pushed the conversation about the big shelter was the cold weather. And that kind of gave it the nudge, but that wasn't the original intent. And that wasn't what the people of that neighborhood originally wanted. They wanted it gone. Now, I understand what you're saying about that being the intent is to keep that building. Just so it's clear from here, from where I stand, my intent will always be to try to get that out of there. You know what I mean? The main soup kitchen. Because the last conversation or one of the conversations I had with Lance was that shelter on State would turn into a family center, like where people with kids or somebody would stay because they were homeless and they didn't fit right at the other shelter. That was one of the conversations I had, which again, if it would create that sort of environment and change that dynamic, I think it would be a little more palatable. But that was the original intent, was to get rid of that soup kitchen from State Street and move it out to a property owned by the city, and which is the industrial park. Now, the fact that the rec center got put there before, that just happened. I still believe it's the city's property and it is near services, and that's where people need to be. I get it's uncomfortable, but you've got homeless people in alleys next to homes where kids are all over town. And so, you know, kids being in danger is happening anyway.
Ms. Sanchez, sorry. I noticed that La Puente has her hand up. Can you, so is that since we've
So it's
opened it up?
council's prerogative. I mean, if someone has a question and that's been answered, then it's still council's prerogative. So unless you have another question or want to allow them but this is not a work session where there's a back and forth.
So I think we need to come back. So I'm gonna just say is that it sounds like this is becoming a very much a discussion thing and something we want to, oh, do you have some?
My mic's not working.
Oh.
So. I'm hitting the button, nothing's coming. Ah.
At the base.
Oh,
There you go.
thank you, Holly. In regards to the grant monies, if we were to give it back, could those easily come back if we wanted to? After we hash it out, as Ms. Hensley said, like, could we reapply for these funds at a later time, and could we come back to this?
We can always reapply. I think there's still going to be a ding on our credibility because, you know, what really changed then to prompt us to have to delay it type of thing. So we'll have a bit of a ding. We'll have a bigger ding on our credibility if we spend the money, we design it, and we don't move forward type of situation. There's probably been multiple discussions with multiple people through this whole thing. I'm not going to debate how conversations started, what ideas started. What I can tell you unequivocally is the direction I had from council is to go after a cold weather shelter. And that's every presentation I've done to the public. It's how we wrote the grants. That's the direction I had from council. But frankly, if you want to change your opinion and be okay with a year-round low barrier shelter, the history of what it was or wasn't doesn't matter if you want to change your mind type of thing. So I'm not interested in that debate concept because you can change your mind at this point. I don't think the grants will care if we change it from a cold weather to year round. That is not, they would care the other way if we sold it to them as a year round and reduced it down to just a cold weather. So it's your prerogative if you want it to be just cold weather or year round type of thing.
Counselor Dominguez.
This was before my time, so I might have a little bit of a different perspective. I'm looking at the blueprint, which I know it's probably, it's not the actual construction print, but looking at it, I just can't help but think that this building will solve the St. Benedict problem. I mean, and if La Puente is willing to take this on, And as far as where it goes and where it's gonna be, with Carson, we just had a gentleman come up who found needles in an alley in Main Street right now, and there's no, I mean, it doesn't matter where we're at in this, county or city. We can throw structures and people all over this county and city, and we ain't doing no justice by just deciding where anybody or anything should land. If it is city property, and it's closer to services, it just makes sense. And I'm speaking from a place where the La Puente shelter right now is half a block from my house. And I remember in the past where there was a problem, but I feel they've done better. Maybe it's St. Benedict's, and if it is, then if it is St. Benedict's, that the traffic has calmed down in that neighborhood, then I feel that people who are in opposition of St. Benedict should really take that into consideration on how it is doing its part. And I understand that people that are for St. Benedict's understand this model if they were part of the planning process. I mean, and if the issue is where do they go in the day, this building looks big enough to the point where why would you let it sit empty for 2 or 3 hours before lunch? Because they're just going to be back anyway, and the same thing in the afternoon, 1 to 4 or 5. I mean, I'm sure they can come up with some clever things to do around resources for these people, but that's just my opinion. I wasn't here when this all went down, but if it's going to be right in, I guess my other question was, where does St. Benedict's fall into this? Is it still going to just remain, I mean, was the intention for it to remain in place and just go back and forth all day to this facility?
So there's different people who use the soup kitchen. So there are the unhoused homeless, and then there's neighborhood people. And so the moving it to the location where it was going to be just south of St. Benedict's, we were going to look at cutting kind of a gate into the fence. So individuals could literally just walk however far it was to the soup kitchen. And then there obviously needs to be a parking lot and everything, because we do have some unhoused who may not be at St. Ben's. They might be in cars, different things like that. But then there still may be community members who want to utilize the soup kitchen as well. So the location was to be located right next to St. Benedict's, with those who are unhoused there having very easy access to the soup kitchen and the showers.
Thank you. And I guess my second point is to what Mayor Coleman said was, apparently it's changed. But it sounds to me like there needs to be more conversations, but then the grant stuff, so I guess I'm torn, but looking at this blueprint, I mean, it looks like something that I know I had envisioned from the past that would help address St. Benedict's, but I know there would have to be some restructuring of whatever La Puente thought it was gonna be and whatever the city thought it was gonna be, but coming in new, it's a huge facility. I think I counted 30 cots right here, and that's a bare minimum of the rest of the square footage in the establishment. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just my contractor mind going crazy here, but it looks pretty impressive, the actual building.
So I'm going to add a comment. So my thought is that right now, La Puente isn't full because of their rules and people can't be there. I am not supportive of having a place that allows sort of without rules to have people go in there, because that's just creating more. I feel like having St. Benedict's, having some rules that they have at St. Benedict's, but obviously at the same time, I don't want to open another shelter when La Puente's not even full because people can't follow the rules to stay at La Puente. I don't want to house, especially by the rec center personally, people that can't follow rules to be at the rec center and make it even more comfortable for them. I don't think that's the solution, because then you need the wraparound service. You need a lot of things. So that's where my concern is. It's not out of lack of compassion, but it really is. Then we're opening up another shelter that then can be for, honestly, then those that, I mean, I guess my thought is we got La Puente, that's where they should go.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, we're not gonna solve homelessness by not entertaining certain models. And like I said, I wasn't here in the beginning. So I wasn't here when this was all planned, but coming from seeing it now from my position and homelessness, and I mean, it just looks like another option. I honestly don't know where I stand on it because just like St. Benedict's, whether keeping it open or closing it, I still don't know where I stand on it because there are other things involved that I think maybe I don't know if people are gonna have to learn how to follow rules.
Yeah.
I don't care if they're homeless or not.
Yeah.
Or if they're, I mean, even if I've had substance abuse problems. I didn't get a waiver to not follow rules. I went to jail. I paid my fines. So at some point, I think there's a notion that I have a hard time deciding on important things like this when I feel like people should be granted immunity because of their situation, and it's not. So I really hope people, like I said before, are having conversations when they're in their spaces that just because of these things doesn't mean that you shouldn't follow the rules. And now we're having an issue deciding on a facility that could probably solve a lot of our problems, but we can't because people can't follow the rules, so.
Yeah, but I'm not, so that concerns me, to be honest. Yeah. So here's, I think where we're at is obviously we gotta kind of make a decision. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you had your hand up. I apologize. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Hensley. I just want to piggyback on what Councilor Dominguez just said. I think all the council want to make sure that whenever we establish access to services and programs, that we serve the population who's wanting to be served and the people who want to be helped, the people who want to follow rules. My interpretation of the low barrier means that, and I may be wrong, I'll ask Heather if she can clarify it. And from my understanding, this shelter would become a year-round facility for those people who choose not to follow the rules. I don't think as a city we should be rewarding people who don't follow the rules or people who want to abide by guidelines. So that's why I'm pretty adamant about us making sure that we think about this before we open up a facility or move forward with grant funds and then find out this is not really what we want, even though the community has spoken loudly about this. So just wanted you all to think about that. And Heather, if you can clarify if I'm wrong in regards to low barrier, what that means, because that's a concern to me. And I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly.
So when Judy talked about the shelter that's on State Avenue, she talked about some of the criteria that people have to meet in order to stay at the shelter. So it's to be engaged in services, or be working to become engaged in services. You can't be under the influence, intoxicated. She had a whole list of stuff. Those can be perceived as barriers. So in order to stay at the shelter, they have to be meeting those criteria. A low barrier shelter means they don't need to be doing any of those types of things essentially. And it's this concept of individuals may not be staying at the shelter for different reasons. So some of it could just be being inside and sharing walls for someone who has PTSD type of situation. It could be because someone has a substance use disorder and they can't meet the criteria of not being under the influence. It could be someone doesn't want to be told what to do and have to engage in services, and so they don't want to do that. It could be they want to choose to live outside. So there's different reasons, including not wanting to follow the rules. So there's different reasons people may not want to be staying at the shelter. I think reading into what Judy said, they've seen somewhat of a shift of those not staying at the shelters as we've seen numbers increase from the opioid epidemic and the substance use disorder and those types of things, because they're not able to meet those criteria. So the shelter on State Avenue, I don't think this is an official name, but it's a barrier shelter. There's barriers to stay in that shelter. The low barrier is they would come in for the night if they're under the influence and not presenting a risk to anybody type of situation, they could stay there type of thing. They don't have to engage in service. So that type of stuff. Obviously, if someone's acting very, very erratically and staff doesn't feel comfortable being able to get them to calm down, they would need to leave type of situation. But it just means they don't have to meet any other criteria other than to be homeless and not presenting a threat to somebody.
Thank you, Heather.
So my thought on this is that I feel like we have a lot to discuss. And there's a lot, it's sort of like what Counselor Dominguez and everybody said, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of decision making. What I don't want to get into is we're committed to something. I feel like we have to take a step back and really think this through and think up the right solution. So that's just my idea.
I agree because right now I'm like torn, and this is something that I need to think about and that we all need to talk about, because I don't feel like I could make a good decision with what's going on right now.
And so where we're at then is we have to make a decision on this grant money today.
So if council does not want to vote on it tonight, because that is your prerogative, looking at your calendar, the first Wednesday we would have available to have a work session would be October 23rd.
And would that work for you in regards to? what
I'll
you're-
just report to the grants that we don't have any activity, and I would need to check in with Harry on how long the engineering firm will hold their price, but I don't, well, we might be getting pretty close. Harry, do you happen to know that off the top of your mind? Okay.
Okay, well, that's good news. Yeah. So does everybody sort of feel that way then? Let's have a work session? Are we good with that? Do you have the direction? Do we need a vote on that or?
No.
Okay. All right.
Question or a request. For that work session, if we could have Judy there or you and some sort of contingency to do a presentation, and two, just so we have clarity on what the operation is, because I think, you know, to the mayor's point, I understand 100% what he's saying. We don't want people that are being, they're doing nefarious things or you know what I mean? Just, we don't want that. So, if we could just have clarity on maybe what, or even if you can get an idea of what a workflow would look like, maybe. That would be a big help, you know what I mean? Because I agree, I think, keep in mind, Horizon Heights, St. Benedict, all these things we're doing came out of the conversation about moving that soup kitchen. That was the priority, that was the first priority. So I think we need to work hard to try to bring that to fruition. And I think if we manage that soup kitchen right, we can get rid of some of these other places. And we can, you know, so if you could think about workflow and maybe help prep some sort of presentation, or so that council is very clear on how it would work and how it's working now and what the future may look like for the State Street building. Okay, thank you.
Righty. Anything else? All right. Let's look at a motion directing staff whether to return electrical services to St. Benedict. Ms. Sanchez?
Okay, thank you. So since we installed, since we created St. Benedict and installed the electricity, it has been a little bit of a headache for us. The first things that we were noticing is when we installed it, it was regular plugins. And one of the rules is you're not supposed to run electrical cords and use it for anything other than charging your devices. But obviously, there's electrical outlets and individuals were going to run electrical cords, and there is no way to police that. We would be out there, we would unplug the cords, and then we would leave and they'd be plugged right back in. And so our city attorney actually came up with the idea of switching out the front panel to USB, which did help that specific situation. The other issues, though, that we've had on a consistent basis is tampering, individuals trying to get to the back side of the electrical box, those types of things. And so from a staff and Excel perspective, they've had to be out there multiple times to make repairs and those types of things. In the May-June timeframe, we did have an individual tampering with the electrical box, electrocute themselves. They are okay. But I think that was the last straw, rightfully so, probably from an Excel perspective. They need to make sure that their facilities are safe to the public, and it was proving itself to not be safe. And so they went and they pulled the electricity. When they did that, that not only removed electricity for the residents at St. Benedict, but it also took away the electricity to the city's Wi-Fi and security cameras. And so we've been without electricity at St. Benedict's until we could have other discussions and kind of wrap our head around what a potential solution would be. And so Harry, if you want to come up too, just in case there's questions. But what we have before you tonight is to give us direction on if we should put electricity back out there. So the options we see is, one, council could decide not to invest any further funds into St. Ben's and not put electricity back at all. You could decide for about $500 that we put back electricity that would then make the security cameras and the Wi-Fi active. Staff recommends that we at least do this. We do use those security cameras. There's times where an individual maybe cut up another individual's tent, and we were able to identify the person because of security cameras. Additionally, if we're going to be increasing the rules and enforcement out there, having security cameras would be very helpful to be able to, especially on the he said types of situations type of thing. So that's the minimum. Staff would recommend at least doing that. But you could also decide to put security back for access to the residents. It would be created in a way where kind of the box itself would be secured, and then there would be a post that then would be for the plug-in. So it's never going to be 100% because they still may want to tamper with that plug-in, but it at least protects the electrical box side of it. And I'm using very layperson terms and looking at Harry, but it does provide more protection and might be enough to convince Excel to put that service back. We estimate that cost to be about $5,000. Did I miss anything, Harry? Did you want to add anything?
No, I think you captured it. Basically, we're gonna build a cage around the headboard and main supply of the power and extend the outlets or the USB ports just outside of it, so.
I have a question. Is there any way to put it higher where they can't tamper with it, or is that not possible?
So there's a few things that we have to balance. One is just the electrical code and what the local electrical inspector will allow in their guidelines, but also what Excel will allow us to do. So trying to balance both of those, they're both kind of bending the rules just so we can at least have the service, and as long as we secure it in a manner that someone can't, get back into the headboard, the main service, they're gonna give us a little bit of grace on that, but moving it up wouldn't be an option. They do want the minimal requirements met.
All right, Counselor Carson.
This question is for you, Mrs. Bolt, Ms. Bolt.
Is the microphone on?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So have you noticed or gotten a vibe that people feel like they want to now follow some of the rules? Like they're in fear of, like, for example, with this electricity, have you talked to anybody? Does anybody have a mindset of we're gonna do better, or we're trying to police ourselves better, or? Cause we did ask for some people to come talk, and you were supposed to bring people and they didn't come, so.
Yes, and I'm sorry that
No,
that
you're
didn't
good.
end
It's
up
not your
happening. But we've been kind of surveying everybody as much as we can and asking folks how they're feeling. And the vibe is that folks are a little confused as to what the future of St. Benedict's is. And I'll confess that I haven't necessarily been able to clarify too much for them what that is. And so I think everybody's a little discouraged. I think that my opinion is that if there were some signs from the community that they were maybe, going to be okay there for a little bit longer, there would be that conversation that we could have about being more in community. And I think I'm not expressing myself as clearly as I want to, so I apologize. There's just kind of a vibe of like, well, we're gonna get kicked out in a month. So why do we need to put a lot of effort into building a community here, is what I'm getting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Again, I
No,
apologize.
that was-
It's not
that was
quite,
an answer.
okay.
That was an answer. Thank you.
But can I add a little bit to that or?
Sure.
Or not? I think that if electricity were to be restored, I think that would be a huge step in showing the community at St. Benedict's that we are reinvesting in them, which would then make me be like, hey guys, okay, cool. Like, we've got this. What can we do to show the city and the city council that we like appreciate this service that's being restored? Like, there was the tampering and all this stuff was really, I mean, it was only a couple people who were tampering, right? But like, it wasn't the whole, there weren't 40 people around there tampering with it, right? It was only a couple people. So like, there is that ability to do some self-policing or some reporting there. And I think that with a little bit of investment, my folks would be a lot more interested in building that.
Thank you.
Counselor Dominguez.
Christina, real quick, do they not see us entertaining, adjusting some laws and stuff around there as not as an investment? I mean, I think we probably could have came to a consensus and closed this, right? At the last time we took several of hours discussing this. No, I just really want to be clear on that. I hope they
that's
see
super
that as
valid.
an investment in their community.
And some of that might be on like my coworkers' end. When we were asked after that by everybody who wasn't here, what the response was, to be honest, mine was like, I don't know, they're gonna revisit it in a little bit. That was my response, and maybe that was me not being clear on what y'all's decision was, but my understanding was that the homeless coalition would look at enforcing the rules and then y'all would like revisit it.
Right.
In
Yeah.
a couple
And
of
the-
months.
That's
Yeah.
it.
And in the homeless coalition, there's not any talk about it being closed like in a month or two. So,
Right, right.
I mean, maybe just a miscommunication.
Possibly, and I've tried to say like, oh, it's not happening like really soon or anything, but even that, the folks out there have been kind of given the runaround by service providers like myself, plenty of times that they do struggle trusting even what I say. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I just really hope they understand that we are investing in them still. And the other thing was of course everybody needs electricity and wants it, but I think they've shown that they just can't have it. They destroy it and it costs tremendous amounts of money. So I don't know where I'm at on that yet, but when you said that they need somewhat of hope or an investment, I really hope they don't miss all the prior work that goes on here as not an investment, so.
and I think the counselors who are willing to come out, I haven't been able to get a time where.
Oh, I've
can
been
actually-
out there.
Yeah, but like to come out and talk, I think that'll be like huge as well. I think there's a lot of things, not just the electricity, that could really visualize that, that concern that you all have.
Thank you.
Can I just jump in real fast?
Yes, please.
So this is a bit off topic, but with that last part that you said, Christina, maybe we should coordinate a time for me to make a visit out there and just kind of have a powwow with the residents as far as what we're looking at, potential timelines, the seriousness of what the rules and enforcement might look like, and starting to kind of set that tone type of thing. Okay.
And Christina, you've asked me and I said I could go this Friday and you never set a time. So, anyway, so I feel like it was in your court and you didn't set the time with me. So, because I said I was available this Friday. And so I just want to, because you're saying we didn't come out. And so I just want to know. Okay. So, I definitely want to come out, and now my schedule is full for tomorrow, but, so for the future, but yeah, I think I've made myself fairly available, so, okay, all right, okay.
Everybody who's like been at all willing, just that work with me on that.
Yeah. Okay. Counselor Carson.
Call me, I'm pretty dynamic, like I'm pretty flexible. I'll go out there with you because I really would like to talk to somebody. I'm, you know, I've made it pretty clear up here. I'm not a huge fan of enabling. I'm really not. And for me to commit to saying, oh yeah, we're never going to close St. Benedict. That's not happening. You know what I mean? We can't do that as a council, and we can't, and people can't expect that. And if people expect us to commit to taking care of them for the rest of their life and solving some of their perpetual life problems, that's a little unrealistic. So I'd be more than willing to come out because I really, if I was living there, if I was in threat of losing the one place that I could feel safe, I'd have been here tonight, or I would have been here before. And I talked to that guy last time and I'm like, dude, go back there and talk to your people and bring something back. Because, you know, we've been here tonight 4 hours. The last time it was 5 or 6 hours. I mean, we're putting effort, like Councilor Dominguez said. And for them to be like, well, it doesn't really feel like that, you know, it kind of sucks for us too, because we're really trying to figure this out. And it's not easy, and there ain't no solutions. Nobody's fixing this overnight. And to the talk of the homeless shelter in the future, that population isn't gonna decrease. Because I don't think inflation's gonna start dropping all of a sudden, you know, hopefully in November, but I don't think so. But, but you know, the reality is that we need some input from them too. You coming over here to give us their spiel isn't fair for you either. You know, people need to speak for themselves. Thank you.
Counselor Vihil.
I think we need to be fair also because the last time that they did come, some really mean things were said and they felt uncomfortable and I watched them leave. So, you know, I know this is probably a really intimidating place for them. And so we gotta just realize that there was some really bad, mean things said to them that night. And so I can understand why they don't feel comfortable coming here.
I would suggest, even if they don't feel comfortable coming here, is then setting it up so they can be via Zoom if that's a more comfortable, you know, like how, like, yeah. Counselor Dominguez.
I would just encourage council to go out there if you can, even on your own. I mean, I don't know if being in this room is gonna be able to
Right.
get to the bottom of anything just because of the way it's set up, but.
And I have been out there a couple times with Sheriff Jackson, and it does make a difference when you go out there. Okay, so we're back to this. I'm assuming you would like some direction, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay, so it sounds like our choices are nothing at all. Potentially doing it so we can get the security system up. And then the other option is $5,000 to get electricity back.
Could we modify the motion, or could we create a motion with a stipulation?
Well, you can suggest anything.
Yeah, so throw it out. We'll see if it's possible.
Okay, so I would say that if we decide that we're gonna re-implement the electricity, we have to do security, we have to do the city's side part. I would say that's kind of a no-brainer at this point. With the USB, the security that you're talking about, is it possible to create a mechanism on those ports? You know, you're creating a security box for that. Is it possible to create something that would lock over the USB ports as a way to protect them if we get a call that somebody's tampering with them, and then we don't have to pull them, or we can just turn them off?
I don't know that I have an answer for that one.
If you could ponder it at least,
Yeah.
we'll just think about it.
Or is it something that we can remove it? And
Yeah,
then, so both turn it off and then remove just the face of it type of thing?
It's possible, but I don't know the electric code well enough to see what they would allow. I know Johnny's very flexible, but you know, it's a possibility. I don't have a solution for it though.
From a technical standpoint, okay? the plug, the 120 doesn't have to be accessible at all by anybody. And whatever hub you're gonna put down there for the USB stuff can be removed. Most of those are, are plugged in with a power cord. And so I think removing that piece wouldn't have any bearing on the electrical code at all, because it's considered a peripheral device.
So we're
So I
not,
don't think,
yeah, we're not putting in actual 120 plugs. It's basically, it's a face cover that is a USB port only.
that's why I say those,
Yeah.
those aren't,
They still have to follow the electrical code because they're still supplied by the same power source. So what they'll do is pull the screws off.
so they're
pull it
hardwired
out.
in.
They're hardwired in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get it. If they're hardwired in, it's.
Oh, I'm sorry. Counselor Dominguez.
I think because of the electrocution scenario, the way that the person electrocuted themselves, I think we should wait on that piece. I think if we can put in place the cameras and the Wi-Fi, to assist with some of the governance that we're trying to put in place. And I think we owe it all to ourselves and everybody to, once we talk to them, to get an idea of where they are personally, in my opinion, because that's serious. It could have went a whole nother way. And, like I said, if you don't destroy things you need, and I'm more of a person who, I've been out there, I know some of them people, and I just feel more comfortable having conversations around, do you understand that, what happened? And I don't feel we should give them access, because I know how electricity works, whether it's an outlet or a USB or whatever, you could still access the actual 110 behind it. All you need is a screwdriver, so.
Anybody? Oh,
So with that, I'll make a motion that for now, we return electrical service for just the city's Wi-Fi and security cameras.
I second.
all right. With that being said, sorry, I put my glasses on. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mayor Coleman.
And just for a point of clarification, that is the $500 option. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Go ahead and everybody can vote. Okay.
Mayor Coleman?
Yes.
I'm missing one.
We're missing one person. Okay.
Okay, the motion carried unanimously.
All righty. We're on to committee reports. Do we have any committee reports? Go ahead, Counselor Behill.
Well, I was at the lead committee yesterday, but they pretty much said everything you said, pretty much everything, so I'm not gonna take up anybody's time.
I had 3 meetings this last week, but I'll make them really quick. So tree board, main thing there is super excited that we got the $200,000 grant. It's very much focused on the south side of Alamosa, many trees. It's going to include hiring a new person. It's also going to include internships. So super exciting. So that's the big news from the tree board. Marketing, we had our retreat. I would say one of the things that really stood out, Heather gave a fantastic update, so I want to commend her. She really shared what was going on with the city. Our partnership with the marketing board is just so fantastic. And so really great there. The Sand Dunes came and really talked about a plan that they have in regards to the lines and different things where they're going to have cutouts and stuff like that to help relieve some of that pressure in regards to the traffic. So anyway, very good retreat there. And then I did have the downtown Main Street Committee. Basically, again, most things were said. I will just state that they said this has been a fantastic summer. First Friday, the Art Fest event really made for a fantastic weekend for the businesses. And they really do see this summer has been a good summer. And so they do see a lot of the positives that have been coming out and what we've been doing. So I thought that was great news as well. All right, staff announcements.
Okay, so we mentioned Art Fest, but I just want to thank all the staff that worked. Some of Andy's crews helped us as far as the tents and painting the footprints and those types of things. Obviously, the street crew was hard at work on Friday installing 15 new art pieces and uninstalling. And then everyone who helped from the art reception and coordinate for the Art Fest with the art vendors on Saturday. I will say I'm really excited about our creative district board. They just bring so much excitement and they want to roll up their sleeves and help and work and all of that. So it's been a great addition to have them be involved in those efforts. And since Elizabeth is here, I also want to just announce that we did present the Patron of the Arts Award to Visit Alamosa. And it was to Visit Alamosa because it's a much bigger part, it's a really big partnership. But a big part of that too has been Elizabeth and how amazing she is working with our Main Street Committee, the the creative district. She's always been there for the arts group before we had the creative district. But Visit Alamosa also focused on creating First Fridays as a way to help downtown businesses and the creatives, and the best cultural scene designation would not have been possible without Visit Alamosa. So just another chance to sing those praises. Next week, we do have a public budget meeting. Council doesn't have to be there. You're welcome to be there, but it's a meeting we hold for the public to review the draft budget and go over any questions, receive any input. It is Thursday, September 26th at 6 p.m. here at City Hall. And that's all I have from a staff update.